Coming to you live from a geosynchronous orbit approximately 500 miles above the North Antrim coast, it's this week's Apocalypse. I am your co-host, Kevin Lenihan. With me, as always, is John Ferris. John, how are you doing today?
I am fine. It's a great day in space.
Yeah, you adjusting well to the microgravity there, okay? Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, no better place to be, really, than in space these days.
Yeah, I mean, you're far away from all the danger and the horrors of the planet Earth, you know, what with it, the scorched wasteland that it might be.
Well, although there is one thing, I mean, it's just us two here, right?
Well, I have a bit of a confession to make on that. See, we're here by the good graces of the All-Ireland Space Programme. We are on their very own... Yeah, great bunch of lads. We're on their very own space station, you know. They're not very well funded, but and maybe that's part of the reason why. Maybe their health and safety standards aren't up to snuff. But I have to admit to you, John, that on the way up here, well, on our sort of our shuttle ride, I did die horribly, and I am now, for all intents and purposes, a ghost.
Oh.
And I am, in fact, a ghost in space. A space ghost, if you will.
Right.
And I'm starting to worry a little bit, because, I mean, well, being dead, you know, that sucks. And here I am in space, and I'm a bit worried, because, like, I'm noticing that this space station seems to be of low build quality, you might say. I am certain I noticed some Campbell's Soup branding on the outer hull.
It was built at Harleen and Wolff, so yeah.
Yeah,
Famous,
not Harleen and Wolff,
Harleen
and Wolff. Yeah, that's the knockoff off-brand one.
I can't pronounce things, you know this.
That's fine. Yeah, so my main concern is that, well, being a ghost in space, you know, I don't really understand what I am. I don't really get what I can do, what maybe the consequences for others might be, and I'm also concerned given the build quality of this particular space station that we're in, that at some point we might in fact go crashing back down to Earth, and I don't know what's going to happen if I, a ghost from space, make planetfall and I'm on a planet. I mean, what will happen? What will I do?
I have a limited sympathy for you as the only living creature on this space station.
Well, we'll see how long that lasts. Yeah, so I'm kind of wondering, like, how are we going to figure out exactly how dangerous I am?
Well, funny you should mention that.
Really?
I think we should revert to our old, our usual mainstay for information, and let's just pick three movies. There's bound to be some movies out there that deal with ghosts in space.
Specifically, space ghosts?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I mean, just off the top of my head, you know, there's a few ghosts in Event Horizon.
Oh.
There's definitely there's something that's similar to ghosts in Solaris.
Yes.
And I mean, Ghosts of Mars, it's in the title.
I mean, yeah, they specifically say ghosts, and they have Mars, and that's outer space.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, I think that's a good sort of subset for us to explore. Cool. Let's have a wee look. All right, so that's us now. So we've watched. Let's see now. We have watched yet another. He keeps coming up. John Carpenter keeps coming up.
I think you have a vendetta against John. What problem do you have with John Carpenter?
I have the opposite of a vendetta.
Sully the good man's name.
I have the opposite of a vendetta with John Carpenter. I'm really annoyed that I have to keep defending him. It's his fault. But anyway.
It's his fault.
Yeah, it is his fault. So we have, again, as you're saying, we have Steven Soderbergh's 2002 version of Solaris.
Yeah.
We have John Carpenter's 2001 classic, Ghosts of Mars. And then we also have the Paul W.S. Anderson space horror ghost movie from 1997, Event Horizon. So, let's start off, I guess, with Steven Soderbergh's Solaris. John, what did you think of Solaris?
I'm kind of torn. It's competent enough, but it's a lot of teary-eyed, sad-looking people talking softly for the most part.
That's an excellent description of almost exactly how I felt about this film.
It's slow, but you kind of get that it's intentionally slow. Like, I mean, it doesn't. It's not trying to go that horror route, or no. A lot of scenes they're laborious to be honest.
I mean, it's more of there's a lot of sort of navel gazing and
meandering.
I was going to say navel gazing and philosophizing, but meandering maybe might be more appropriate. I found it to be. I wouldn't say that it was a slog to get through it. It was still, there was still something to it.
It's an hour and a half long. It does feel longer.
Yeah, I was actually, you know what, see when you said there that it was an hour and a half long, I'm actually shocked that it was an hour and a half long, because to be honest, I in my head it's 2 hours minimum in my head. But yeah, it there's a lot of long takes, there's a lot of scenes that just sort of go on and on.
With very little dialogue, and and the music, I didn't find the music interesting. Well, apart from there was one tune that kind of sounded a bit like Afterclang, which are a great band and everyone should check out. But other than that, it was just kind of like these swelling, orchestral things, and it was like okay.
Generic.
Yeah, a bit generic.
Generic epic space things. So I mean, I understand. Well, I understand what they were going for. I mean, I guess. I'm not really sure what the point was.
I mean, I kind of think conceptually, like I like the idea of the kind of deeper message that you don't really know someone at all, no matter how close you are, because you have like a certain image of everyone you know, and you can never fully understand anyone because you're not inside their head. You don't have. You don't know their secrets. You don't know how they'd react in every single situation. So, I kind of like this idea, but it does seem like it's a bit stretched out in it.
Yeah, and we should probably just address what that idea is. So, I guess the whole premise of the film is that George Clooney, playing the character of
Chris
Kelvin, I believe is his name, like the great scientist from Belfast, actually. Mr. Kelvin, inventor of the Kelvin scale. But anyway, so he is essentially a guy who he's a
psychiatrist.
He's a psychiatrist who works for this company, I guess, or is it the government? I don't know.
Done. He works for this company.
He works for this company, I think, whoever it is, like
DBA or something.
Yeah, they essentially his very good scientist buddy has this space station, and they are examining this. Now, I know that in the book and the original movie, the original Russian Soviet produced movie,
which I haven't seen. I'd like to see that one.
I have read up on it quite extensively, but never didn't get around to actually watching it, which I'm a little kicking myself about. But in those particular versions, in the original novel and in the original Russian film, it is an ocean planet that they are orbiting around, and they're examining, and they are trying to understand. It's covered in water. Now, it looks more like a blue dwarf star in this version. I think maybe they wanted it to seem more ethereal and mysterious than just a big ball of water.
It's space. So, you want it to... You want it to look crazy.
Yeah, so the basic premise is that the people on the space station, that George Clooney is not on the space station, it's his friend's space station, essentially. They have refused to come home for some reason. And the company is like, you know him, and you're a psychologist, you're his friend. You need to go out there.
They've also cut off the AI and things so that the company can't just like override things and go, they've taken steps to stay where they are, and they're basically saying to George Clooney's character, his Mr. Kelvin,
away you out there and see if you can convince them to come home, because this is like a high value installation to us, and blah 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 blah. Please go help. That's the MacGuffin to get him out there.
It's pretty damn crazy as well, because it's like they do mention they sent a security team or something like that.
Yeah, who were all killed, right?
Yeah, oh yeah. There's no sign of them at all. There's
blood and bodies.
Yeah.
They have bodies in the morgue when he gets there.
But like they go to this guy and basically go, so you're the only chance we have to get these people. We're very confident that you can convince them to come back, even though we don't know what's going on here. So see ya. And
it seems that it's like basically if this doesn't work, we're just gonna cut them off and abandon them.
Oh yeah, that's exactly what the plan is. But it's like they send him with nothing. Like he doesn't even get a means to protect himself.
He has a briefcase.
Well, that's true. I've played the Hitman games. A briefcase is a deadly weapon.
Oh my, yes. If when thrown, it is lethal. Yeah, so he shows up there, and essentially what starts happening is, well, his friend has died. He has committed suicide, I believe.
Yes, yeah, he has. We should mention before, though, because it kind of it comes back to it, like when he's moping about before these guys come to him. He's just cutting a cucumber the most angry way possible to cut a cucumber.
He's really angrily preparing dinner, yes.
And he cuts his finger badly, and so he's got a scarred finger, because this kind of comes up with later for wee moments. It sounds it kind of is inconsequential, but it allows characters later to
they focus on it in a way where they're like, oh look, you're different. It's essentially you have a scar that you did not have before in the before time.
Burnham is a witch.
Yeah, so essentially he gets there, his friend has killed himself, and he sees a child running around who should not be there. And so the basic premise seems to then be that something is up with the thing that they are orbiting around, this Solaris, originally a planet. I guess it's a blue dwarf here, I don't know. And people are being visited by entities that have been constructed from their memories.
So I mean, we're using the term ghost very loosely with this, but you know, what else are you going to call them?
Yeah, no, I always thought of them as ghosts. I'd seen this movie when it came out years ago, and I always thought of them as ghosts then. Although, you know, it does address it that it's like, because he starts seeing his dead wife, who's been dead for a few years, who it transpires committed suicide. In fact, she was suffered from, I assume, bipolar disorder, maybe. They don't specifically say, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter for the story anyway, but she is someone who had definitely had manic depressive episodes and has killed herself, but he starts seeing her again. And so I guess the basic sort of philosophy, the point that the film's trying to make is about, like, yes, as you were saying earlier, are people are not necessarily what we think of them as, or how we remember them. The whole crux is that, like, she is very open about the fact, once she figures out what she is very much like, I'm what you think of as your wife. I'm not really her. I'm your picture of her in your head, because there's this overriding thing where he sort of obsesses on the fact that maybe he blames himself a little bit for her death and that she's suicidal.
Yeah, because the last interaction they had was for him. He was very angry that she had an abortion. And
without telling him she was pregnant, even. Yeah.
So he's very upset, storms out, and basically at one point she says, like, she'll not be able to live without him, and he goes, that's fine then. Comes to his senses later, obviously. You know, he's very upset. We've all been in situations where you say very silly things and regret it, and then come back. And unfortunately, he doesn't come back in time. She's already, I think she takes pills or something.
Yeah, she does. She takes some pills, and then she takes some more pills, and then she just gradually just keeps taking her pills until they don't really get too graphic with any of that stuff, which is fine. That probably would be gratuitous. So it is a little bit restrained in that regard, which I do appreciate.
So already, feel good movie. Woo.
yeah, yes, most certainly. So I guess the whole thing is that is living with this facsimile of this person that isn't really them. Is it? I guess it's he doesn't want to go. He eventually, none of them want to go home initially, except for there's one of the scientists does want to go home. She's very much wants to go home.
Viola Davis's character, which is
she wants to go home, but she doesn't. Yeah, she doesn't want to bring these things with them.
No,
and she's afraid that it will follow them back. So she essentially, it's not something you really see happen. But in the original version, they call this device the Annihilator, which is a brilliant name. But
why did they get rid of that?
In this one, they throw out some wishy-washy pop science of the day terms to explain away what it is. They use the term Higgs quite a lot. Course. Because everyone's all on about those Higgs boson particles. Essentially, it's a gun that destroys your copy and makes it not come back. And then that gives them the whole choice of, should we destroy these things and go home? Yeah. And he sort of gets into the mold of because the first one, he murders the first one that shows up.
Yeah, he just...
I
keep saying that I keep referring to it as he blows her out the airlock, but
no,
it's actually an escape pod. But
yeah.
I prefer the idea of blowing her out the airlock.
Yeah, that's way more dramatic, but that's not what happens. But it's that, but in slow-mo, I guess, because they do address it later where they say, well, if she's still out there, she would have run out of air by now, and she's definitely dead. And then they have the whole thing about, do they even need her to live? And is there this weird copy of her just floating around in in an escape pod forever? Which is a horrible, horrible thought.
He also has when the first one, this one that he eventually puts in the escape pod and sends out to space. Whenever she first appears, he has the most calm reaction. He goes, "God damn it," and gets out of bed and then starts questioning her. Where I think I would be out the station. I would have jettisoned myself out into space and screaming.
Yeah, he is weirdly he does initially recoil in surprise, and then he just sort of starts having a conversation with her. He gets used to the idea incredibly quickly.
Oh, which is strange because lots of the runtime is just taken up with slow looks and stuff like that. And actually, it's usually after he dreams about her that she appears.
Yeah,
and it has to be said because it seems that it's a memory. It seems like it's the memory of their first meeting, and I hated it because it's so pretentious and so unrealistic. The dialogue
strangers on a train and then over at the party and it's insufferable. Yeah,
quoting Dylan Thomas to each other, and you're just going, "Oh, would you just wind your necks in?"
I mean, they do address that later in that he was faking that, in that he didn't even know the poem. He just knew that one line from the poem, and he was using it, I guess, to pick up chicks. To use
I can't imagine it working very often.
No. Only in weird pretentious circles, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. Well, I suppose that's maybe psychiatrists hang out in pretentious circles.
Well, he certainly does. Everyone he hangs around the. In fact, I found watching, there's a scene in that, actually, it's shortly before one of her particular, maybe even a proper, depressive episode that she's having, where she is sitting there at the dinner table with him and all his mates.
Oh, yeah, they're insufferable.
They are just insufferable, and I'm just listening to these people talk, and I'm like, I would have faked food poisoning by now if I was her and went home. Really, it's awful. So I don't like any of his friends. I don't like any of the people he hangs around with. I don't really like him either.
No, as it transpires, and I kind of think, because this is during the time period when George Clooney was getting, he was in all these sexiest man and blah blah blah, and I think he tried to take more roles to kind of push against this image. So I don't think this character is meant to be likable.
No. I mean, Yeah, I think he's a decent character in that he is fleshed out.
Oh yeah.
He's just it's just that much like when we talked about Van Helsing before in Van Ford Coppola's Bram Stoker's Dracula. He's not a guy that I think I would get on with.
No.
But he's a guy. He was a guy that I enjoyed watching. Now I don't know if I necessarily enjoyed watching this guy stir around the place and sort of say little while saying a lot and saying nothing.
They got their money's worth out of George Clooney.
They did.
We got George Clooney. The camera is not leaving his face.
Yeah, he's just looking. He's just got those sad eyes constantly. Except in the flashbacks.
Every choice that he makes in this is a very selfish one. Yeah. The first the first dead wife appears, and he
let's call her Alpha.
Alpha appears, and
Alpha Rhea. Her name is Rhea. Alpha Rhea appears.
Well, we can call the next one Mika Shelley because she mentioned something about that.
Okay, fair enough.
I can't remember. It's like her mum was diagnosed with a mental illness. I can't remember exactly what. And,
yes, it's like her imaginary friend from when she was a kid.
Called Mika Shelley. So then her mum started referring to her as Mika Shelley and would only talk to Mika Shelley. So the second one, Mika Shelley, she starts becoming suicidal because, as we kind of touched on, George Clooney remembers her because she committed suicide. He remembers her as being suicidal. Therefore, the facsimile that has appeared is going to be a suicidal.
Yeah, that's the intense dream that he has before she appears.
Yeah,
is related to that. It's the memory that he is focusing on right before she is formed. Yeah, is her death. So yeah, she is sort of prone to, and she becomes very aware that that's what's happened. Yeah, that the reason she actually at one point she drinks liquid oxygen. Yeah. And is dead, which seems like just the roughest night, and that is straight out of the novel and the original movie, and it's just seems horrible. She's all burnt and messed up, and then she sort of Wolverine heals on the floor and back to good health in a way that actually looks really horrible. Whenever she is reanimating, it seems genuinely painful. Yeah, her performance. I think her performance is very good in this film. I think the performances in this movie are good, and I think it is well directed. Yeah, for the most part. I just think that it feels incredibly long when it maybe in parts where it shouldn't. Yeah. It's boring at times when like there's points where it's not. There's points where I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, that's a really cool concept. Yeah. And this is kind of a fun thing that they're doing, and then it just descends into navel gazing and staring out windows and thinking about death. Yeah, to me it kind of labours over the wrong things and the wrong shots a lot of times, and just it's just that thing of yes, we know what's going on, just drive this forward. Come on, that there is like. There are times where like I enjoy like a movie slowness or a series, where it labours over something or it takes its time or if it's earned it or if it makes sense to the if someone has suffered something traumatic and it is maybe slower and gets you kind of involved with them, but maybe that was the intention here, but I don't think it's pulled off. You do end up just kind of going, just blow yourself out the airlock. That's extreme, but all right. Yeah, because she does eventually go through with the killing herself thing whenever they have the Viola Davis's character who makes the
Higgs boson thing,
the Higgs boson magic annihilation ghost suicide machine. Yeah. So that's sort of they're then catalyst to evacuate, because there's a whole like, now that we've started annihilating these things, you almost get the impression Solaris is angry. Yeah. Because it's getting bigger to eat them or something. Kind
of goes into kind of Marvel territory or something here.
Yeah, and that's where we get sort of
planet
snow.
is eating us.
Yeah, then the character of Snow is just like, he's the one who lets them know that. And like, I think I find, what's that guy's name? The guy that plays the guy Snow.
I find him incredibly annoying in this. Like,
Do you?
From
Jeremy
his
Davies?
very first appearance, he's annoyingly cryptic, and he's like a tweaker. He's like some kind of...
He's fidgeting constantly, and he's like going off in little tangents, and he's almost talking to himself while he just does weird things with his hands and is looking around. I think he gets typecast a lot, that guy, as like the jittery nervous guy. The jittery nervous smart guy usually. I mean, he was in Saving Private Ryan. He is the interpreter.
That's right.
That they're forced to take along with them, and he's playing a very similar guy in that he is, he's nervous, he's very unsure of himself. In this, he's sort of a bit more sure of himself, but he just doesn't really care about what's going on with other people.
It just kind of begs the question. I mean, well, at this point in the movie, you find out that he is a ghost, for want of a better word. We're referring to them as
he's
ghosts.
A ghost.
Replicant, whatever you want to call them.
Don't argue, he's a ghost. They're ghosts. They call them visitors.
Yes.
They say your visitor, so obviously Kelvin's visitor is his dead wife, Rhea.
So maybe, do you know what, I kind of want to know who conjured him up, or did the original him conjure himself?
Conjured himself. That's the thing I don't understand, because in the movie, everybody conjures someone who means something to them.
Yeah.
So his friend Jabarian, who's the scientist who was leading the place, who has killed himself by the time George Clooney arrives, or Kelvin arrives rather, his son is still there running about the place, because we see him, but he has died.
Yeah.
The guy who called him up. So his son's not dead. His son's just back on Earth. I think the only person who's conjuring a dead person is Kelvin, conjuring his dead wife. We never really find out who is it. Dr. Gordon is Viola Davis's character.
Oh yes.
We never really find out who she has conjured.
No, she just kind of keeps herself trapped in the room with whoever it is.
Yeah, she never lets whatever it is leave the room that she's in, her quarters.
Yeah.
And tells them, once she leaves her room, she's like, well, I invented this device that kills them, and I killed mine.
Who you gonna call?
Yeah, and we're never gonna find out who that was, and I guess that's fine. It's nice to have a wee mystery, I suppose.
Yeah.
I guess calling them a ghost is maybe not... I'm gonna continue to call them ghosts, because they're spooky.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's a ghost-like element to it. They're kind of ghosts of memories, if you will.
Yeah,
they're just made solid. So
memory. Yeah,
that's what we're sticking to. So.
Yeah, sticking with ghosts. So I'd say, what are your general feelings about the film as a whole? Then, do you think it achieves what it sets out to do?
Conceptually, I prefer it a lot more conceptually than I do in practice. I wanted to watch the original, the Russian one, but I didn't get round to it. So hopefully I'll do that sometime today, maybe. But I just thought it was, again, everything we've said. It just kind of laboured over the point too much, and it just really got grounded down in minutiae that it shouldn't have, that it really shouldn't have focused on. As I said at the start, it's a lot of teary-eyed, sad people, kind of mumbling usually. A lot of the time I was struggling to hear what they were saying, and so I suppose for that reason I don't think it did very well, like critically. Yeah.
It did. It was a flop, I think, though, at the box office. As far as I know, it tanked. I think it made like 80% of its budget back, maybe something like that.
Yeah.
But did not do well. I think they blamed the marketing for that. But I don't know how you mass market a film like this. I don't know how you appeal to a huge audience with something that is so steeped in philosophy and self-analysis.
Yeah.
and it is in a sci-fi setting, which maybe does make it a bit more interesting, but I think that just makes it more confusing when you're trying to like nip that down into maybe like a 90-second trailer or something, you know. So yeah, I could absolutely see this just failing.
Did you enjoy it, or were you very much the same?
I enjoy certain aspects of it. I like the concept, but I guess that's more from the novel than it is from any sort of thing, anything creative in the film.
It's a loaded question.
It's not. It's just it. I just don't think there's anything very interesting about it beyond
the concept. Yeah, I'm the same. Yeah, it was. It's the kind of thing that if it was in a single episode of Star Trek, I'd probably be sitting there going, that is a brilliant idea, and
I'm almost certain this happened in an episode of Star Trek as well. Definitely in Next Generation somewhere.
Yeah, you know, and I think it would have worked better as just that, like half an hour or 45-minute like thing in an episode like Star Trek, you know, something of that ilk. But to make a movie out of it, it just seemed they had to stretch a lot of it out. And we actually, after me forcing us to talk about the cut finger thing, we didn't even mention it again. So.
Yes, well, the cut finger is a thing that, like, I mean, that's how they denote. I think that's how she figures out that she isn't real.
Yeah, because she has no memory of that. And plus, she also, at this point, she also says that she has memories of them together that he's obviously bestowed on her just by dreaming of her, but she can't remember living them.
Yeah, she doesn't remember. She remembers the memories. Yeah. She doesn't remember it happening to her because they're not her memories. Yeah. They're his memories. Yeah. And again, reinforcing the fact that she is this almost projection from his head.
Yeah.
Which, again, I like that concept. I enjoy that concept, but ultimately, this is a film. I remember when I originally saw it. I saw it probably when I was 18. I think that's when it came out. I was about 18. I think I saw it when it came out. And I remember, because it was such an interesting concept, I remember quite liking it then.
Yeah.
But I did not remember. I mean, again, I haven't seen it since then. This is the first time I've seen it again since I saw it the first time. And I was like, I didn't pick up on a lot of the stuff, a lot of that aspect of it the first time through. And to be honest, now that I have them, just like, you know what, maybe it's not that great.
I had a similar experience because, I don't know, when you're 18, that the concept that it's exploring is maybe a bit kind of more new to you. Where, you know, we're in our mid-30s now. It's like, I've seen this done better.
Yeah, I've seen this done elsewhere and more effectively. Yeah. Okay, so that brings us on then to our second movie, John Carpenter's Ghosts of Mars. Now, I feel like I have to do this every week and give a little speech about John Carpenter, sort of justify why we're picking on him, because, again, as I've said before many times, like, I really like John Carpenter. I think John Carpenter's output in the 1980s was great. He's a lot like Metallica in that respect, where in the 1980s he did a lot of good stuff, and then the 90s things got rotten, and then beyond the 90s is not even worth talking about. So
we will at some point cover some of his good stuff.
Hopefully, I would love to. That would be delightful if I got to sit down and watch a really good John Carpenter movie. So, as I say, I mean, I love The Thing. The Thing is my favorite movie. Halloween, brilliant. Like, the quintessential slasher movie for me. Prince of Darkness, deeply flawed, but still kind of a great film. Big Trouble in Little China, just a romp.
Great.
You know? But then we get into the 90s, and it's all sort of downhill from there, and we have some bad movies like
one we covered in the very first episode.
Like the one we covered in the very first episode, John Carpenter's Vampires. Not a good film.
No, and not great, as we discovered, for showing us how to deal with vampires.
It was not very useful. It was almost like the worst. It was like bad advice. Yeah, almost. It was very bad advice, you know. And he did a remake of the Children of the Damned into his Village of the Damned, which I actually quite enjoyed, but isn't a good film. In the Mouth of Madness. So, see, he has a few in the 90s that are right. He's all over the place. But anyway, we're not talking about them, unfortunately, today. See, I wanted to derail the whole thing there and start talking about good John Carpenter movies.
So you're saying Ghosts of Mars is not a great John Carpenter movie?
Ghosts of Mars is a fucking piece of garbage and I hate it. Ghosts of Mars is hateful. It's bad. It's just, it's probably the worst thing he's ever done. And I just mean in his life. Like, I don't know if he's killed anybody in secret or whatever, but this is worse.
Can I read? I discovered there was a 2011 interview with John Carpenter. I don't know what it was in.
Did he express regret?
Well, not really, but he kind of, you know what? It basically says that it's your fault. You didn't get what he was trying to do.
You are joking me. He's not gonna.
Well,
you know, I'm gonna be quiet. I'm gonna be quiet. You just go ahead.
It's not that extreme, but he claimed he was trying to make a mindless and silly, yet entertaining and thrilling action flick. Where, and this is the quote, the universe allows its characters and plot points to be silly without being fully fledged comedies, akin to 80s movies like Commando, 1985. Rambo First Blood Part 2, 1985, and Predator, 1987. Looking back on the film and its criticism, he stated he was frustrated that most people thought the film was meant to be a serious horror movie and feels that he should have made the film more openly comedic and in on the joke, saying, "It's called Ghosts of Mars, for Christ's sake. Why would people take this movie seriously?" This is just from the IMDb trivia stuff. But okay. So does that change your opinion on this movie? You know, he was
no. No, it does not. I had not heard that before, and you know what, mate? I'm sorry, John, but even if you're approaching this as a comedy, it fails on that front.
Well, no, he's saying he doesn't want it to be an out-and-out comedy. He wants it to be, like how you would enjoy Commando and Rambo 2 as like, oh, these are ridiculous. But you know what?
You're leaving out the third movie he referenced, Predator. Which is Predator, which I cannot believe he would dare put this movie in the same league as Predator, which is just a magnificent achievement in stupid but great alien cinema.
Well, I'm being a bit facetious and just trying to wind you up, really.
Yes,
with that.
And you're doing it really well, John. You're doing it with aplomb.
Tremendously.
Yeah, well done.
When I read that, it kind of it puts a bit of perspective on things that, those movies I can enjoy. A lot of people can't because they're dumb action movies,
Yes.
For the most part, and I do enjoy. Sometimes I want something real dumb that I can just veg out to and laugh and not take too seriously. But it shows you that there is there's a level of I don't want to use the word artistry, but I'm struggling to find something else. But those movies, when they were made, they were taken seriously. Like, the people who were involved were taking them seriously, and I think that's maybe the problem. Was John Carpenter making Ghosts of Mars kind of a bit tongue in cheek, and if that's the case, like, as a bit of making it as a bit of a joke, and it's like, that's an expensive fucking joke, mate.
Yeah, because if you're gonna say that yes, it's supposed to be funny, then yeah, fair enough. You still have to take the process of filmmaking seriously, though. You still have to edit it well. You still have to have, all that stuff belongs
have likable characters, maybe?
Yeah, all that stuff belongs in the script. You're not like, oh, look how badly I framed this shot. That's not funny. That's unpleasant to look at. Look how poorly. Look at these wipes. look at the wipes.
Oh, the wipes.
The wipes from like the diagonal wipes from one scene to another. I was expecting a star wipe to come up at some point, and that, you know what, that actually probably would have been really funny if he had gone that far, but he didn't. He didn't do that. And like the script isn't funny. The script is not funny. The script is abrasive, and it is
the characters when there is a character, because a lot of the entities who are there do not have much of a character.
No.
Even the main character, who is played by Natasha Henstridge. Yes, yeah. That's the one.
Yes, of Species fame, which maybe we'll get into at some point, but let's not do that now. I'm already fired up.
She doesn't have much of a character in this, and
her character is she's on drugs, but then that's it.
Yeah, and the drugs don't really affect much for the most part. They don't seem to, hinder you. It's like salvia. It kind of hits you for a few minutes, and then that's it. You're grand.
Yeah, she just sees her pendant do wobbly things, and then she's fine, and that's sort of it. Yeah, so I think this film now. I think the thing that exemplifies my problems with this film is this. So this is the crystallization of everything wrong with this film. So the whole film is told in retrospect. The whole film is, in fact,
and then
a flashback. It's yeah. So the whole film's a flashback. It begins with Natasha Henstridge's character. She is in front of some kind of military tribunal, or at least it's not a tribunal. They say that it's not.
Yeah.
But it's more of a debrief with this high command. So they're basically asking her, right, you showed up this morning on a handcuffed in a train.
Yeah.
On this colony so the whole thing takes place on Mars, of course, because it's Ghosts of Mars. And Mars is in the process of being terraformed, but they also just have colonies on there and people are living there, and mining seems to be a big industry on Mars.
Yeah.
So she has shown up on a train back to this capital city where she was initially dispatched from, and she is handcuffed.
And it's a matriarchal society as well.
It is, yes.
That has no bearing on anything later or now. So
nope. That's
about it.
It is not. Yeah, the only difference that makes is that it says it in some text at the beginning.
It might actually be in a way, it might be sexist in its own right, because is this how he's trying to explain that the commanders in this team that go out, I was about to say later, but go out in the flashback, all the women are in the leading roles of it? Is it like, is that
is that his nod towards of just like, oh well, all the women, the only way in which women would be commanding officers is if society was a matriarchy. It's like, oh no, that's unfair.
Yeah, that's really stupid. But that's the only reason I can because it is never really brought up, or maybe it's not meant to be. It's just,
it doesn't matter. It's weird that he just throws it in, in text at the beginning. You're like, okay, right, fair enough.
And the year is also, just in case anyone's wondering, it is 2176 when all this takes place. So
the far-flung future.
Yep.
Yeah. So she shows up there. She's handcuffed on a train, alone. She's the only person on this train. So they're like, right, what happened? We dispatched you to go and investigate this colony we lost contact with, just like aliens, so long ago, and now you've come back a couple of days later. So the whole film is told in flashback, so she starts telling the story from the beginning. There is a point in this movie where she and the commanding officer, played by Pam Grier, everybody's just sort of doing whatever in this movie. I was going to say doing a great job. I don't know if she's doing a great job. She's just sort of not.
And I mean, it doesn't help. The dialogue is horrendously bad.
It's very bad.
I think Pam Grier at one point actually says something pretty tough hombres, and
she's quoting Aliens. They're quoting the movie Aliens directly.
But
some pretty tough hombres is how they refer to the Marines in Aliens. They pull directly from Aliens, and it is shameful. I'm sorry. Carry on.
But the delivery and everything is just atrocious. it's one of those ones you're like, oh, do I really have to sit through this entire movie? Is this dialogue
cringy.
all going to be like this?
It's cringy, and it's like now that you've told me that, oh, maybe he sort of intended it to be a comedy. I guess doesn't justify that, but it explains it somewhat.
It could do, yeah.
So anyway, the whole thing is told in flashback, and yes, so she's like, oh, here's what happened. And they're investigating this colony. Oh, there's nobody here. Oh, look. They're there to get a prisoner.
Yeah.
They're there to get Ice Cube.
Oh, no, sorry. Desolation Williams.
Desolation Williams, played ably by Ice Cube. He's fine. He's just sort of doing the thing that Ice Cube did in movies.
I don't even know about that. Like, I think he phones it in certain parts as well. Like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ice Cube's fairly competent actor. He's been in some stuff, you know.
He's been in some garbage, though.
Yeah, he's been in some garbage, yeah, but he's normally all right in it, you know. I mean, unfortunately, he's normally typecast as well, so... Extremely,
yeah. He's usually playing a gangster of some kind. He has played a police officer on an unusual number of times, actually, for someone who was in a gangster rap outfit.
Yeah.
And who was ostensibly in his youth a criminal. He has played a lot of like police captains and police detectives and things like that. But I guess you could say the same thing for Ice-T.
Yeah.
It's weird that like rappers. There's a few like 80s gangster rappers that have become known for being police and stuff. Now in this, he is straight up playing a criminal.
Yes.
And he is definitely being typecast as that. But they're there to get him and bring him back for trial or execution or something, because they've decided that he got caught trying to pass notes that were stolen.
Yeah.
From, it was like a payroll or something, and like everyone who was involved, basically the payroll was stolen and everyone who was there guarding it was horribly murdered.
Yeah.
Strung up, decapitated, fucked up. So they're like, oh well, he must have done it because he has the money, so we're going to do him for that and we're going to kill him. So they're there to get him. So they do this whole thing where they split up and go and investigate different parts of the town that is weirdly abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll follow our big Natasha Henstridge and Jason Statham, whose entire character is he wants to have sex with Natasha Henstridge's character and nothing else. Also, he shoots things good.
He's just layered with sleaze. He is just the sleaziest character.
Yeah, that's all there is to him.
Oh, he also is the master lockpicker as well. Apart from when he isn't.
He's the master of unlocking.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, except when he suddenly can't. So they do a lot of stuff where yes, they'll split up. And then they'll meet up again with each other later. And at that point, what happens is they'll speak to the other people they weren't with. And then those people will say, oh, well, here's what happened to us. So at that point, we are in... Now, the whole film is a flashback because it's being told by her in this tribunal. So at that point, when they meet up with people and they're like, oh, what happened to you? Oh, let me tell you a wee story. And then we have a flashback. So we've got a flashback inside a flashback at that point. And there's a point in this film where they all split up again, and Natasha Henstridge and the sort of extremely generic other cop guy go off, and then they come back and meet up with Jason Statham. He has these guys with him, and they're basically like, who are these guys that you've suddenly brought back with you? Like they're like citizens or whatever, and so he's like, oh, let me tell you a wee story. So again, we're in a flashback and a flashback, okay? So he's out and he's creeping around, and then we see the sort of first sort of physical manifestation. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just doing the Inception music because we're getting deeper and deeper into the flashbacks here.
You carry on. So we're in a flashback and a flashback because he's like, right, here, let me tell you a wee story about where I was. So he goes out and he sees, we see the first sort of physical manifestation of the ghosts, i.e. like the possessed people. He sees them from above doing very silly things, and we'll get into the lead antagonist in a bit. But for now, let's just ignore him. So he sees, so he's watching them going, oh, look, they're all down there being weird, and that's great. So he then goes, oh no, they're coming this way. I better go and get out of here. So he goes to hide in this shed.
Yeah.
kicks open the door of the shed, and there's these guys are in there hiding.
But also before he gets in, they can quite clearly see him. They're like,
they can see him go in there. Like, I mean, they're over the rise.
Unless
and
they're
right
really blind.
Yeah.
There's nothing. Yeah. It's Mars. There's nothing else.
There's no terrain. There's no trees. There's no bushes. There's no anything. It's just straight plain. There he is going.
And
he's
struggling to get in.
Indeed. So he gets into the shed, and there's these 3 guys in there. The guys that he has brought back that we've seen. Now it's got to get confusing. So because he's explaining how he met these guys. So he sees that he meets those guys, and they're all like and aggressive at them, and then they figure out, oh no, he's here to help. And then he says to them, now remember, we're in a flashback already at this point, and he basically says to them, how did you end up in here? And then they are like, oh, well, here, let me tell you a wee story. And then we have a flashback of them and what happened to them before. So we're now in a flashback, in a flashback, in a flashback. And it is just, that exemplifies, I think, everything that is wrong with this film.
Yeah.
It's like they forgot they were already in 2 flashbacks and just thought, here's a lazy way to give context. We'll have a flashback.
Yeah.
And it just, there's so many layers deep, and it is extremely, Inception is right.
I mean,
just
actually just before even that happens, Natasha's character goes to a truck or something, and they actually have a flashback for something that happens like literally like 2 minutes.
It just happened. Like, she's standing at the front of the truck, and Pam Grier goes around the back of the truck and then disappears.
Yeah.
And then we have a flashback of, I think, is it Jason Statham?
Yes, maybe? Yeah. Like, so you're sitting there, what the hell's going on? But
you see the same. You see a lot of the same scenes from like 2 or 3 different angles at certain points in this movie. But
it doesn't add anything though. That's the well, again. And I know you're not going to defend it at all.
No, I'm not. No, I have no dog in this.
And there's also what something that kind of annoyed me around this time, where they're just searching through all these rooms, and they find some prisoners, and they eventually find Desolation Williams in a cell. But just before this, there's a really stupid jump scare, or suppose it's meant to be a jump scare, of like a hand that flops down for Natasha, and there's like a scream sound as well for it. So it's like
which comes from where?
Yeah, and it's like, what?
Who's that coming out of? Because it's not her.
So I thought the screaming hand was funny.
So the hand was screaming is what you think the hand was screaming.
Yep, it's Thing from Addams Family.
Yeah. Or it's just a ghost. Maybe the ghosts were screaming. Ooh. Yeah. So
and
this
also,
film has a hell of a lot. Yeah.
So sorry to interrupt again, because again it's around this whole time when they're searching. One thing that I noticed, which was kind of ridiculous, was every character who appears to them even the ones they still know. I think Jason Statham at some point, they appear in jump scares, so they don't. Kind of anyone they find, there's someone like in a cupboard or something.
Yeah, she's in a cupboard.
Like, that's a jump scare. There's like the prisoner lady, she appears in jump scare. There's someone else. Like, this keeps happening where like characters introduce themselves through jump scares.
Yeah, they just jump out and go, "Hello, I'm here too."
Which, Mars is pretty boring by the looks of it, so you got to make your own entertainment.
Yeah, they're all just that's the general pastime is hiding in a cupboard and waiting for someone to come open it so you can scare them and introduce yourself.
They're that annoying roommate that some of us might have lived with, who just always tried to scare you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always just like, haha, I'm in the kitchen too. Oh my god, I'm just trying to make some beans.
Jesus, I had a stressful day at work. I don't need you jumping out of the cupboards.
Yeah, so outside of all the sort of the flashbacks and the flashbacks and the flashbacks and the jump scares, I'll also say that the editing in this film is atrocious.
Oh,
it's
rough.
Just, it's all over the place. This film has the look of a Sci-Fi Channel original TV show.
Yeah.
But like pre-Battlestar Galactica. Like before they got sort of good at that. And this film was like 2001,
yeah,
I think.
2001, yeah.
Yeah, and it feels incredibly 90s TV movie.
Yeah.
To me, like the sets look terrible.
The sets look terrible, and everything's kind of just this one reddish color. Which, yes, they're on Mars, so
Mars,
we get it. But it's just like a muddy, kind of washed out. It's a horrible movie to look at.
It is. It's horrible movie. The shots are the whole thing's really badly framed.
Yeah.
I find all the shots are incredibly boring. It's just, here's a static camera just sitting here looking at this street or looking at this room and two people standing talking at each other. And then, and we got to talk about the ghosts of Mars because, my God, like, I guess the special effects, I guess, are a bit gruesome. I mean, they have a lot of corpses hanging around the place.
John Carpenter's always quite good with his gruesomeness.
It was, and it's the same people who did as Greg Nicotero who worked on The Thing.
Yeah.
And like it is people who've worked with John Carpenter before on his good films. So the effects are okay. Like the actual like creature effects are all right. They're a bit grotesque.
Yeah,
and all that.
The bits were because once a person gets possessed by the ghost, a ghost from Mars, they start kind of piercing their own skin and stuff like that. You know, like putting these big needles and stuff through their face, and that stuff actually does.
A concept that will be familiar to anyone who is a fan of the TV show Firefly, or the movie Serenity. Yeah, they're basically Joss Whedon
Reavers.
Just stole the Reavers in that are just these guys.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna say it. I think Joss Whedon whole cloth took them from this film and maybe thought nobody would notice because who cares about Ghosts of Mars?
It was a fairly decent bet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a safe bet. If you're going to steal like an antagonist from something, steal it from something no one knows, and then maybe you can get away with it. I don't know. So props to Joss Whedon, I guess, for that, I suppose. But they are exactly that. They are the Reavers from Firefly are just this. So yeah, they get possessed by the ghosts,
and they become kind of like they're obviously very aggressive and kind of animalistic in a way.
Yes,
which kind of leads to another question that I have of how did they stealthily sneak up to the commander, Pam Grier, and cut her head off without anyone noticing?
Her. Yes.
Because like she just disappears. She doesn't say. Again, it could just be a thing where, you know, these soldier cops, whatever they're meant to be, are very bad at communicating, and she just kind of wanders
soldier
off.
Cops seems about right. It seems like they're quite a military type police force.
Yeah.
They're very military. Yeah,
typical matriarch.
Cops, indeed. Oh yes, whatever that means. It means nothing. This film has nothing. The fact that it's matriarchy is nothing. Yeah, they're able to sneak up on her quite effectively and take her out, even though she seems to be portrayed as being one of the most capable among them, and like she's a badass and all this stuff, and like she gets basically just taken out like it's nothing.
Yeah, off screen and everything. Like, and
all we see is we just see Jason Statham seeing her head
being mounted onto a spike
and really carefully mounted on a spike. I was expecting them to but maybe they didn't want to damage the prop. I don't know. But it looked like way too careful for someone who's putting a head of their enemy on a spike.
Yeah.
But they look like...
And at any time after this, or before, well, that's kind of the first time we really see a ghost from Mars, so to speak. But any time after this, they don't really show any kind of stealth-like,
No.
leanings.
They're incredibly aggressive immediately, usually, and are prone to engaging in movie kung fu. They're not just fighting, they're not fighting like people possessed. They're fighting like stuntmen who know how to do movie kung fu, where they're like blocking and dodging and doing spin kicks and stuff like that, and it's very, very, very poorly thought out, and it just... If you were in any way sort of absorbed in the fiction or had suspended your disbelief at that point, if you somehow managed to suspend your disbelief up to that point, that's the thing that just blows it out of the water. And I think we have to address
Oh, the leader.
The leader of now.
Can I do my
looked him
impression?
up. I looked him up. Are you gonna do the language?
I'm gonna do his. I'm gonna do this. Is
the supposed language that they're using to actually communicate.
This is the leader of the Ghosts of Mars.
Yeah, we'll get to his name in a minute because I found out what his character name was by looking him up. But you go ahead.
He
Not
speaks
bad.
like a fucking baby.
He does baby talk. So his everything he does is na na la la na ha na la la na 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 da 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 na ha la. That is basically his entire vocabulary.
Yours was more aggressive.
It's ana da da na ha na 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 ala na 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 la la na na da da kuchiku. Yeah, so he's terrible, but I find him amusing because that's ridiculous. And again, on top, like just by virtue of the John Carpenter quote that you read earlier about it maybe going for that sort of horror comedy thing, maybe that starts to make a wee bit more sense.
Yeah.
Now it does just seem bad when you're watching it. It doesn't see. It's funny. It's funny, but it's not funny for maybe the right reason. It's funny for definitely. It's awful.
Oh yeah.
And it made me laugh, but I laughed at how bad it was.
Again, I think it's quite telling that even after you, don't know whether you want to believe it or not, the quote is from 2011, so a good 10 years after this movie has flopped.
He's maybe had some time to come up with an excuse for why this
it took
movie
him
was
10
so
years
awful.
to make an excuse for this movie.
Yeah. But
I think
as
it
I
still
say,
feels on what he's like kind of saying that he planned. If it is meant to be kind of comedic in that sense, like not comedic but tongue in cheek, it's still a pain to watch.
Yeah, but I looked that guy up because I thought I recognized him, and I did. He's actually in Underworld. He's one of Lucian. That's Michael Sheen's character. He's one of his like second in command guys that's always hanging around with him.
Okay.
So we've touched on another film of his before.
Underworld's following us.
Yeah, he's primarily a stunt performer. He is a stuntman, and he's been in a lot of good things, and he's done a lot of good work as a stuntman. He's had a few actual acting roles as characters. But in looking him up, because I was like, oh, who is that guy? I discovered that the name of his character in this movie is Big Daddy Mars. Which maybe also leans into, because I was looking at the list, I was looking at it and going, that can't be the guy, can it? And I was like, maybe that's some like background character, maybe. And I was like, no, that's him. They're calling the main bad guy is called Big Daddy Mars.
Big Daddy Mars.
Yeah, and he's terrible, and he talks in terrible baby talk. So yeah, you have sort of justified to me in a way my hatred of this film even more, because that sort of John Carpenter, I wanted this to be tongue-in-cheek, like he failed miserably at that.
Yeah.
Tries to make characters deep by having them be bad. Again, much like John Carpenter's vampires.
Yeah.
He tries to make a character be edgy in some way by having them just be awful.
Yeah. Everyone's kind of a bit of a
everyone
dick in
sucks
this.
in this. Everyone sucks in this. The scientist lady who's there just to explain everything about the ghosts, and then once she's done explaining about the ghosts, once she's done with all the exposition and how to get away with it, immediately is possessed.
We should mention at this point also that if you kill someone who's possessed, the possessed ghost is then free. So essentially, by killing someone who is possessed, you are put into more danger. You're put into more danger because it's going to go to the next vessel, surely.
Yes,
although
they know this. They know this. It is explained to them that this is the case, and then for some reason they decide, when they're doing the big crux of like, we have to run away from these things and get to the place, they could just not shoot them and just run.
Yeah,
but they don't. They spend a lot of time mowing them down.
Or
even though they know
shoot
how
their legs,
dangerous.
Try to immobilize them.
Yeah, kneecap them or something, but they don't. And that's what leads to people getting possessed. And in fact, our main character, the Natasha Henstrich's character, gets possessed and then is fine because of drugs.
Yeah, Jason Statham decides. Wait, the find her necklace. Desolation Williams had her necklace, and goes, "I stole it, but you might as well give her it back for some reason." And they decide, the best course of action is to give her one of these drugs, which turns out to be great because, as you say, this is all she needs to get rid of this ghost.
Yeah, feeding her addiction apparently was the solution to all of her problems.
But also,
it turns out
it's kind of a missed opportunity at this point as well, because I thought, all right, well, obviously what they're all going to do now is they're all going to take these drugs and like just go on this like high rampage through these Mars ghosts.
Yeah.
But no.
No, it gets rid of them.
Yeah.
Because when you're high, the ghost... But even then, we don't get any... We get visual indicators of the ghosts leaving the body by it going sort of first person and weird and having it sort of float around.
Yep.
That doesn't... I mean, the ghost doesn't leave her, though.
She burps it out.
Does she actually burp it out?
Yeah, she burps it out.
I missed that, and I apologize
you
for
must have fallen asleep.
Not doing my due diligence. I was so just done with, because this is maybe the fourth time I've seen this film, which is disturbing. I don't know. I have seen this film. The first time I saw it, I watched it because John Carpenter, great, and then I've somehow seen it now 3 other times since then. Unwillingly. Well, this time it was voluntary, but the two in between, not so much, and I didn't remember that. But it's just, it's so inconsistent with any of that stuff, and they do just let her in, and you know what? I don't know if I want to talk about this film anymore because it's making me sad.
Well, we have to. You did it to yourself.
No, it's all my fault.
Yeah, we actually skipped over the good part of it as well, which
good.
Is
Good. I'm glad. That's easier on me, but what? Come on, okay, right. Drag me back into it. What part of the film do you want to talk about?
It's even before the kind of ghosts kind of get heavily involved. There's this whole thing with Desolation Williams trying to escape, and he manages to somehow steal the. You mentioned before the generic cop guy. Who just is there. He manages to steal a shotgun off him.
He doesn't he?
Which is
that's not explained.
No.
That happens off camera. He's in the other room. He went through there and he has your gun, yes. And they're not raging at him for being a bumbling fool.
For being an idiot. Like, how do you lose your shotgun to someone?
When the plot demands that Ice Cube is armed, that's how you lost his shotgun. Ice Cube needed to have a shotgun in the next scene to save Natasha Henstridge so that we can see, maybe he could be on our side.
Yeah, and they have this whole thing of like, I saved you kind of thing.
Yeah, now we're even, so I can arrest you again.
Yeah.
Which should not be how that works with human beings.
No.
Okay.
They do get him back. I'll do a bit of the talking since you're visibly weeping right now.
I'm starting to become less corporeal with every waking moment talking about this film. I can feel myself becoming transparent.
So they get Desolation back into a cell, and the 3 men who Jason Statham brought back with him, who we got that, as you helpfully explained, the flashback within a flashback within a flashback. He brings them back, and whoa! Turns out they're Desolation's mates. So,
the big reveal of, no, these guys can't be trusted after all.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, so they all go, have the cop people at gunpoint. They all go into the cell, and all 3 of them walk into the cell.
Oh my god, that's so stupid. They're all in the cell, gathered around him in a little sewing circle. Yeah. Like, hooray. And then she literally just slowly walks out of the cell and then just closes the bars. And then they're all like, hey, you locked us in here because we're dipshits. Let us out or I'll shoot you. And it's like, yeah, well, you can't, then you'll be trapped in there forever. Yep. It's so bad.
And they make the weakest pact. They make the weakest pact ever then because...
it's all based on promises.
Yeah, it's all based on promises, which they both kind of say, Ice Cube says something along the lines of, oh, I've never made a promise in my life or something. She goes, yeah, well, I've never made a pact with a criminal before, and that's it. That's apparently all they need, and now they are buddies.
Yeah, that might be, outside of the flashback and the flashback and the flashback, that might be the stupidest thing that happens in the whole film. But it's tough competition. There's a lot of dumb stuff. Like, towards the end of this movie, when they're getting away on the train from the ghosts, and the MacGuffin device that's going to somehow obliterate the ghosts, in theory, is about to go off, and so they need to get far away from it, or they'll get got too, I guess, by the device. They have this whole thing where the ghosts are on their train. There's some ghosts on the train.
Yeah.
Big Daddy Mars among them. And so Ice Cube's like, oh no, I have to go back here and sort out these ghosts. So he goes back, and they have all this dynamite, and he's like, I'm going to go set off this dynamite and blow up the ghosts.
Yeah.
So he goes and he primes all the dynamite and gets into Scuffles. And then on the way back from Scuffles, he decouples the train car.
Yep.
Why didn't he just decouple the train car? Because they would have been left. They say that the explosion is going to be a 3-mile radius, and they're definitely well within that. He could have just decoupled the train car, because he walked past that on his way down.
Yeah.
He could have just decoupled it and left them behind. But he goes out of his way to go and like do dramatic things, and then they kung fu fight them on the train, and it's terrible. And Big Daddy Mars does a lot of screaming, and it just doesn't make any goddamn sense.
No.
At all. It doesn't. That whole scene is pointless.
I commend you for finding the only plot hole in this movie.
I know. I had to look very hard for it.
Yeah. No. There's so much wrong with it. I mean, you could go into near enough every scene is just awash with ridiculousness or bad dialogue, or I mean, one of Desolation Williams. It turns out one of the guys is his brother. He gets ganked.
Yeah, after he's dead, it's revealed that guy is his brother, and he does not give two shits. Because
one of the guys, another one of his team,
Soul Patch.
Where's your brother? He goes, oh, he didn't make it. And he goes, oh god, and dies immediately as well. And it's, I don't know, it just plays off so rubbish. It's just. The whole thing is just, you can't care about these characters because they're not characters. No.
There's nothing to them. They don't do anything. They try and make it seem like they have redemption arcs, but they really don't.
No.
Ice Cube's character, Desolation Williams, is shown to be a criminal. Now, he's not the murderer that they think he is.
Yeah.
Because it's the ghosts that did the murders that he's being blamed for. But at the same time, he also sucks. And is quite willing to just, leave anybody behind, including his brother.
Yeah.
Which is how his brother dies. He gets a bit... He thinks, he looks like he's maybe getting possessed, so I'll just leave him, and away he goes.
And the fight that you're mentioning on the train as well, there's so many edits in it that... again, it's probably because the actors are doing the action scenes, and they're not getting like proper stunt people.
It's close-up stuff, so they can't have now. All of the Ghosts of Mars are played by stunt performers.
Oh yeah,
just in heavy makeup. But yes, the actual actors are there, and they are doing the fights, and it looks really stilted and awkward.
And that always looks bad unless you have someone like your Keanu Reeves or your Tom Cruises who go out of their way to train because they want it to look amazing.
Yeah, they want it to look like he's really doing it, and then they're like, oh, well, I will really do it then. Whereas this is like, I'll really do it, but I won't put in any of the effort. You just tell me when to put up my arm to block and when to duck.
You can't blame the actors for it either, because some people are trained to know how to move their body and stuff to make it look impactful. And
those guys are jumping about all over the place, and they're giving it 110%.
Yeah, it's such a skill to be able to do that, and that's not what an actor does.
No,
that's you can't just expect someone off the street basically to walk in and do your very complicated job of making it look like you can get punched, and they do get injured quite a lot. So
your heavy choreography, and It's just, it never looks convincing. It always looks bad.
Yeah.
And then they have, of course, the end of this film is just, like, we finally get out of a flashback. Finally, the movie is no longer in a flashback. And they've got away and they blowed up the ghosts. And also, when they blow up the ghosts, my God, the size of that explosion that they show you from space. They say it's 3 miles across, but we get this aerial shot of Mars where we can see the curvature of the planet, so it's quite far up.
Yeah.
And I swear to God, like, looking at the size of the explosion, there's no way that's less than 1,000 miles in radius. But anyway, if they finally get back away, and she lets Desolation Jones go because they bonded so much, apparently.
Yeah.
That she's like, oh no, you're cool now. But literally everyone else has been horribly slaughtered and is dead.
Yeah.
He does betray her a little bit because he handcuffs her on the train so he can get away. He's like, oh, I'm not going to go back for trial. But she seems kind of okay with it.
Yeah. It's all like, we smirks back and forth and, you got me, you scamp.
Yeah. So she finishes her stupid fucking debriefing or whatever with the matriarchs and then goes for a wee kip back in her cell or her wherever she lives, and everything in this thing looks like a prison. But
before that, the matriarchs are kind of like going, can you believe this? They're like basically saying, oh, that story, we can't really tell people that, and that's ridiculous, isn't it?
Ghosts, mate, whatever.
Which, I mean, they're right in saying that. It is ridiculous, and no one should believe it.
No.
But, apparently they have to be proven wrong.
Yeah, so she goes back to her cell. Now, everything in this movie looks like the same set, nearly just shot from a different angle. I mean, there's a part where they go into a pharmacy, and that pharmacy looks like a friggin' mine. It looks like a mine with a bunch of wires hanging out of the walls, and like, this is not a pharmacy. But yeah, so she goes back in there, and then it's like, suddenly that she has a wee sleep, and then suddenly there's alarms, and everyone get to your battle stations, because and then we see like the mist of the ghosts coming over the hill, and like, I guess they didn't. I guess the MacGuffin machine didn't work in getting rid of the ghosts of Mars. And then we have the obligatory, something that I always think when you see an ending like this, it always reminds me of the Super Mario Brothers movie, because it ends exactly the same way, where Ice Cube, Princess Daisy, it is in the Super Mario Brothers movie, but in this movie it's Ice Cube, basically comes and kicks her door down. He somehow knows where her quarters are. I don't know.
I would completely watch a movie where Ice Cube played Princess Daisy.
That would be a magnificently better film than this. He kicks down the door and he has these extremely shiny submachine guns that just look like something you would. Yeah, well, they look like something you would pay real money for to have in a video game so other people could see your shiny guns. And kicks in there, and then he's like, yeah! And she's like, huh? And then they just do the old, come on, let's kick some ass thing.
That dialogue you actually used there was too good to be in this movie.
It was better. Yep. It was better than what they actually do. They have a little joke. That doesn't make any sense given anything that's happened before, where he says to her, you would have made a great criminal. And then she looks at him and says, you would have made a great cop.
Yep.
And there is no reason for her to say he would have made a great cop, because he definitely wouldn't have made a great cop. He would be a terrible cop.
He's good at shooting people.
Yeah, apparently that's what cops do on Mars, I guess. So yeah, maybe would have made a great murder cop. Criminal, dead, right, great. And then they have a little smirk where they go, nah, at the same time, and it is sickening. And then we get hit with the credits, and then we are suddenly happy that Ghosts of Mars is fucking over.
So you can rewind back and start it all over again.
Never.
So
never. So John, did you like Ghosts of Mars?
No, I kind of want to say yes, just to like, I'd love to be really able to convincingly say, yeah, I actually quite enjoyed it and stuff, but I know I'll not get through it. But
no,
well, it is a garbage fire. It is absolutely atrocious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it fails on every level, which is remarkable. I mean, the pacing is. There is no pacing.
No,
we get to see scenes like 2 or 3 times from different angles. We're like, we've seen all this before. You're showing us the same thing again.
And I mean, that can be done that can be done well,
Yeah,
getting
it can be
different
very clever.
perspective on things. But this is not an example of it.
Yeah, in other films, they use devices like that to be like, oh, here's something you as the audience maybe did not know.
Yeah.
And now you have that dramatic irony of like, now you are privy to a new detail that the characters aren't because you saw this happening from a different angle. That doesn't happen in this. It's literally just a different angle. It's just a different angle. So you're like, oh, this is Jason Statham's perspective, which is exactly the same as Pam Grier's perspective, which is exactly the same as Natasha Henstrich's perspective as well. Why did we even do this? So yeah, the pacing is all over the place. The editing is so bad. Those wipes, I mean, they maybe if it was like an out-and-out comedy, if they really leant into the comedy thing, maybe those wipes would be funny. Those diagonal wipes across the screen from the scene transitions. Maybe that would be amusing. In this case, they are baffling.
If you made it an out-and-out comedy, you would have to change a lot more.
Yeah,
the screen wipes are actually the least offensive thing in this.
Yeah, I mean, like, most of the humor is derived from Jason Statham being inappropriate and disgusting.
Yeah.
And that's about it. I'm just gonna.
So how did you feel about this movie? Do you know?
Oh, I love it. It's my favorite. It's the best thing John Carpenter's ever done. I'll tell you that. And maybe like best film. Like, if you're gonna go from like, let's get top 10 movies from 1990 to 2021. It's definitely top 5 million somewhere. We'd have to list it. If we were going to list every film, it would be on the list somewhere.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I hate this film. I hate everything about it. I think it's awful. I think it's badly written. It's poorly directed. Sorry, John. Everything about it I find offensive. I think maybe I just feel it extra acutely, and maybe I'm taking it too far. Just because I have a lot of love, I have a lot of time for John Carpenter in general, but this is just so egregious in every aspect. I wouldn't recommend. If you're gonna like get really drunk and be like, haha, look how bad this film is. Maybe.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good one for that. It's like it's not so bad. It's good. But it's one of those ones. If you have a couple of friends who you can have a few drinks with and laugh through a movie and basically talk over it. Very Mystery Science Theater 3000.
I mean, this would be a great movie for them to do a riff tracks of, and you know what? Maybe they have. I haven't checked.
Oh, actually,
but if they have, that would be. That would be a valuable way to, I think, experience this movie. If there's a riff tracks of it, do that.
I was actually going to say earlier, I think, because I mean, I recognize it's a terrible movie, but I think it gets to you on a much more insidious level because
I have
you do have
myself.
a lot of love for John. I mean, I love the thing, and I do like a lot of John Carpenter's movies as well, but I think it's especially annoying for you for some reason.
It's just I've let John Carpenter get into my heart is the problem, and it's the feeling of, if you're betrayed by a stranger, that's bad, but to be treated harshly by someone that maybe you love is way more painful than anything anyone else could do to you.
It's a very abusive relationship you've got with John Carpenter, isn't it?
I think that he doesn't realize he's being abusive, though. I don't think it's intentional. He changed at some point. He changed, and he changed for the worse.
You shouldn't make excuses
in a way.
For him.
I know. I'm sorry, but anyway, that's Ghost of Mars. I hate it. Don't watch it. Watch The Thing instead. Okay, so our third and final movie, and may I say the spookiest of our movies, of our ghost movies today, that is Paul W.S. Anderson's Event Horizon.
Yeah.
So, John, what did you think of Event Horizon?
Event Horizon is all right. It's got a few strange decisions in it, but out of the three of these, it's the one that succeeds the most in what it's doing. the opening's kind of weird. There's like this weird techno music.
Yeah,
it's
the
like
music,
Orbital
it's
or something.
very. There's Orbital and the Prodigy. I think maybe it's
Prodigy's
the Prodigy.
definitely at the end. It's
yeah,
the
that's
credits.
yeah, that one at the end is definitely the Prodigy. But yeah, it is. It's very mid to late 90s.
Yeah,
This film,
and it doesn't suit the tone, the rest of the movie at all.
No, it feels like one of those like corporate things where it's like we need to have a popular musical artists on the soundtrack. Maybe I think Underworld suffered from that as well.
I read somewhere that because Paul W.S. Anderson, he did the first Mortal Kombat movie.
He did.
And Orbital.
Mortal Kombat! Exactly.
But I think he got them on board for this because he enjoyed working with them or something like that. Oh. So maybe he's just a big techno head and he just really likes...
That was a poor decision, I think. I feel like tonally, I don't think it works.
No.
At all. No.
Especially to set up your movie, it's a bit strange. But also, just as what we mentioned with Ghosts of Mars, my brain refused to give him the information. It's trying to wipe that whole movie out of my out of existence.
The music in Ghosts of Mars, I don't want to talk about Ghosts of Mars again. But
no, we've already done that. We're not going back.
As a contrast to this, the music in Ghosts of Mars is way, way worse. It's just generic metal happening constantly in the background. Whereas this, I feel like the techno in this isn't invasive the way it is in Ghosts of Mars.
No.
It's in the start and the end, and then in between there's a lot of just actual atmospheric music.
Yeah, there's very little music, but what I was going to say is Ghosts of Mars has these like screen wipe things, and there's a few cheesy decisions for transitions in this movie as well. There might be some wipes. I can't remember if there's wipes, but
if there is, I didn't notice them. They didn't.
Yeah, there's like these spinny zoom things that like some of it maybe just hasn't dated well, but apart from that, it's kind of enjoyable. I think again the script is not the best, but I think they got good enough actors that they could pull it off. Lawrence Fishburne is brilliant in it, and Sam Neill is terrific.
Yeah, the cast in this movie is great.
Yeah.
You got Lawrence Fishburne, you've got Jolie Richardson, you've got Jason Isaacs, who, to be honest, his performance, I have some problems with his performance, mainly what frigging accent he can't settle on an accent, but he is, as far as emoting and generally acting, he's very, very, very good.
Yeah.
But he flip-flops between like Yorkshire and Dublin, like at the drop of a hat.
Well,
he'll start a scene being Irish, and he'll end the scene being from up north somewhere in England. And I find that a little jarring.
This movie takes place in 2047. Maybe things change drastically.
Yeah, maybe culturally, yeah. Maybe Yorkshire and Ireland became this one weird mass and some kind of tectonic event. I don't know.
There is a funny thing. There's. Again, it's almost obligatory in these sci-fi movies that you have this text explaining kind of what's happened through the years. There's a very funny
future of 2015.
2015, the first permanent colony on Mars. I was like, fucking hell, they're optimistic.
Yeah, and like in 1997, that's way too optimistic.
Yeah, like it's 18 years. Yeah. 18 years away, so they thought we're bound to be living on Mars by then.
Yeah, we're bound to be living on Mars by then. Yeah, I mean, even John Carpenter wasn't that friggin' like optimistic.
Yeah, he really wanted to keep Ghosts of Mars grounded.
Yeah, he wanted to keep it, believable in some way, I suppose.
But apart from those like few kind of. And I mean, it might just be a personal thing for me. I found a few transitions kind of cheesy in it, and there's a few moments that are like, what's happened? There's like an explosion later that just kind of comes out of nowhere, but you can kind of explain a lot away with what they're dealing, which is kind of the ship from hell, essentially.
Yes. But, so that's the premise. Is like in this film, it's not necessarily that. There are ghosts around. It's that the ship is possessed.
Yeah.
Like, they even say that at some point. Like, what are you saying? The ship is possessed?
Yeah.
Which is ludicrous, but it works, I think. I'm just going to say straight up, I really like this movie a lot. This movie pushes a lot of buttons for me in that it's science fiction horror, and it is not shy about being grotesque whenever it wants to be. And in fact, something that kind of made me a bit sad when I was reading up on this movie is apparently the initial cut that Paul Anderson made for this movie was too gruesome.
Yeah.
Like the studio didn't like it because it was too nasty. And unfortunately for me, a lot of the footage was apparently lost because this movie did not do well in cinemas, but in the tradition of a lot of great horror movies like Evil Dead, stuff like that, didn't do well in the cinema, but did very, very well on home video and DVD.
Yeah.
So once it got successful there, they apparently were like, oh, well, let's then put together a proper director's cut that is sort of that initial version, but, professionally done. And all the footage was destroyed.
Yeah.
It was lost. It was either lost or destroyed, which, I would love to see that.
They found in really weird places, like a salt mine and stuff. They were finding, these deleted scenes, which is like, how does that even happen? I know so little about how to make a movie. It's
about
like
movie production. Yeah,
it's crazy. But it's an actually interesting story. It'd be great to see a documentary on it or something like that. It seems kind of interesting just how all this got lost and like scattered across the globe.
Scattered to the winds. Like, we can't find some of it, and the stuff that we can find wasn't properly stored and is wrecked. I think that was some of it actually just wasn't stored in any safe condition and ended up being overexposed.
Yeah, because this is VHS, so
yeah, and this is, obviously the whole thing was shot on film. Yeah, and this is before digital was widely used, so they had to physically store the film in places, and I guess they just didn't do it properly because maybe they didn't care that much about it. And in fact, there's a lot of stuff about the production of this movie where it was, the reason a lot of this happened is that it was rushed. Yeah. Because Paul Anderson, actually, I think he made some commitments maybe that hurt the production in that he was allowed to do it. The Actors Guild has something like, you have like 10 weeks once you finish a film to make like an assembly cut of the movie and like edit the movie properly and get everything together and hand it off. He basically told them, oh no, okay, they were in such a hurry because apparently Titanic was not going well and was sucking up so much money that they needed a film out. They needed something out there making money for them.
It's a strange film to have replacing Titanic, isn't it?
So he was like, all right, well, when confronted with that, he said to them, right, I'll usually by guild rules, by Directors Guild rules, he's guaranteed at least 10 weeks. And he's just said to them, throwing himself on his own sword, I guess, I'll do it in 6 weeks. Don't worry, we'll get this done. And I think like he threw together something for them a little earlier and they didn't like it because it was too gruesome and gory. Yeah. And then they had to go back and get rid of a lot of that stuff and change some stuff, and that maybe hurt the production, and the whole thing was done in a hurry. Yeah. So I feel like that's maybe how you end up with, well, this footage wasn't properly stored and we don't know where this is and this ends up here. But ultimately, I still think that the film that they come up with at the end of the day is a really good science fiction horror film.
Oh, they did very well, especially to have those time constraints, and it kind of it maybe explains because I was going to say there's a whole thing where you can see quite clearly the influences of the likes of Hellraiser and Alien.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Alien is everywhere in the design of the sets, especially their ship that they arrive on. It's a lot like the Nostromo.
Yes, yeah. To the Lewis and Clark is their ship. To the point that it's almost like at times I was watching it kind of thinking there's a fine line between homage and ripping something off, and it's always like a bit of an awkward one because if it's a homage, like that's fine, but just you saying about the time constraints makes me think it probably was done as this is kind of what we want to go for, and this type of thing, and they do it very well. Like they get the atmosphere right from the very start.
They do. I mean, techno aside.
Actually,
because that intro of like I don't understand what the intro credits are trying to communicate to me, because it's like I feel like we're supposed to be going through a magic blue space tunnel.
Yeah.
That's sort of swirly, and then there's aggressive techno playing
because
while
techno
all the
is
credits.
hell.
Yeah, are we coming from hell? I don't know. It's kind of messed up, but then the tone immediately changes from there, and it becomes spooky and weird almost immediately. But yeah, what you're saying about it being like Alien, their ship, their little kitchen dining debriefing area looks almost identical to the eating space, the sort of cafeteria space in Alien.
Yeah.
Like the table, the sort of the cabinets around them look really, really similar. Everything, to the point where I think whenever I was reading about it, apparently in the initial script, there were actually they were concerned that it was too much like Alien.
Yeah.
And they actually did change a lot to get away from that. But I guess and production design wise, they were still sort of cribbing from that.
Yeah.
And what you're saying about the Hellraiser, I mean, the room where the engine...
The core is... Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a gateway to hell.
Yeah.
It looks like it's going to open up and demons are going to come out.
At one point, Sam Neill's saying to... or Weir, sorry, is his character, is saying to Lawrence Fishburne's character, "Oh, come on down, it's perfectly safe." And you're going, fuck
no,
off.
It's not. Yeah, no, it isn't. This weird spherical room covered in like nasty sort of brushed metal discs with big, odd, jagged spikes on every surface that... To be honest, the whole film, you're waiting for someone to get impaled on one of those, and it never happens.
Yeah. Actually, just to go back to Paul W.S. Anderson's previous film, Mortal Kombat, that'd be a great stage to fight in Mortal Kombat.
Indeed. That would be a great Mortal Kombat stage. You could imagine like uppercutting someone onto one of them spikes. Yeah, that would be incredibly satisfying. Or uppercut
them into the portal to hell.
Indeed, yes, and then they come back and they're evil, or I don't know, they're in bits. Actually, and the depictions of hell are quite disturbing in this.
Yeah. And it's done very, like, it's very flash and like very quick, so you can't grasp onto any one particular image.
Yeah, it's clever. You're never quite sure what you just saw, but your brain fills in the blanks in a way that maybe you'd rather it didn't. Yeah, that's something I really appreciate about this film, is that it, even though apparently the initial version was way more gory and lent way more into that, and corporate influence sort of detracted from it. It's boo, corporation studios, whatever. But it still is kind of like disturbing, and in fact, I think in no small part to actually the dialogue, the things that are said imply way more. Like, there's the guy Justin who's
who might as well have just worn a red shirt to work that day.
Yeah, from the beginning, it's
as
like
soon as you meet him, you know he's the first.
He's this smiley, naive sort of kid who everybody just likes.
Yeah,
you're like, oh, we really like
Baby
this guy.
Bear.
They call him Baby Bear. They have like Mama Bear is the
Peters.
Sorry?
Peters,
yes, her name. They call her Mama Bear and they call him Baby Bear. So she has this sort of thing towards him. She has a whole thing about like her child, how she misses her child, and maybe she's imprinting on him a little bit in that way, and like she is mothering him a little bit, and everybody likes Justin, and Justin's all smiles, and you're like, oh, Justin is fucked.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he's the one who gets horribly exposed to hell. We never really see what he sees. But he's basically, he's a man on a fishing line essentially, who gets sucked into the portal initially, and then is rescued by Cooper, who is, he's the rescue guy. He's there to rescue people, which is his job, and so he effectively rescues him. But then I
do know a little bit of trivia about I can't remember that actor's name, unfortunately. I had it written down somewhere and I don't know where I put it, but him and Lawrence Fishburne were in a movie together. What's Love Got to Do About It, where they played the same character, because they
What's Love Got to Do About It? I think it's What's Love Got to Do with It. Is it?
Is that not what I said?
No, you
didn't
said
notice I
what's
said
love got to do about it? I believe that's the Tina Turner.
What's
What's love got to do with it? Aye, what's love got to do with it? Yes.
What's love got to do with it? They both play Ike Turner at different points in his life. So there you go.
It's been a long time since I saw that movie, so I did not remember that. But that was a good film as well. I like that. Yeah, so he's a good actor. He's sort of Cooper is the comic relief in a way. Whereas he's an everyman kind of character in a way where he is there reacting to things, like going, no way, no, this is messed up, or this is horrible, this is scary.
He's very calm under pressure.
He is. I mean, that's his job. I think
should actually,
you can forgive that.
We should start at the beginning, maybe, and before we get too far into this. So it begins pretty much with Sam Neill's character, who we might as well just say is the guy who designed the Event Horizon, which is this ship that can travel faster than light.
But it doesn't though, which we get treated to an explanation of exactly how it works, which again talking about things that were stolen, talking about things that have been stolen from other films like the Reavers and the Ghosts of Mars being the Reavers in Firefly. The explanation for how the ship moves was, I'm just going to straight up call out Christopher Nolan here, stolen whole cloth for Interstellar. It not only is it the same concept, he uses exactly the same example to explain how it works with a piece of paper and a pen. He does exactly the same thing in this, where he's like, oh, what's the shortest distance between 2 points? And he has the piece of paper that he draws 2 points on, and they're like a straight line, and then he cheekily says, actually no. And then he folds over the piece of paper and pushes it through, just like Matthew McConaughey does in Interstellar. The same explanation. And it is a really good way to explain that concept.
Oh yeah.
So I appreciate that, someone already did this.
Nolan's going to come after you now. He's going to send his secret army to kill you in the night.
Yeah, his secret interstellar army. Ugh.
So his interstellar army. Mm-hmm. But so even before you get them on the ship or anything, Sam Neill's character's already having these horrific nightmares about his wife who committed suicide. Another suicidal wife.
Much like Solaris. Yeah, he has these flashbacks to his wife.
But I will say that in about 10 minutes of this movie, it does a lot more in the whole of Solaris.
Oh, yeah. In fact, in a lot of ways, whenever I was watching this movie with my fiance, she actually pointed out, there is a weirdly similar concept to Solaris.
Yeah.
In this movie, but like this movie is evil Solaris in a way. But I think it is significantly better than Solaris.
Yeah, so. It's definitely a lot more entertaining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the reason I want to bring up this dream, though, at the start, is Sam Neill has the best reaction to your dead wife essentially appearing and turning around and having no eyes. Where, most times, it'll be like a scream, he has this real gutter. Whoa.
Yeah, he does a woo.
It's but it sounds so real. It's if you've ever been properly scared and you kind of go, whoa.
It's a genuine sort of noise that one might make when they were scared, and then suddenly be like if anyone else was around, you'd be like, that wasn't me.
Yeah,
I didn't do that.
But I thought it was very good, and it's something that I'd like them to kind of almost brush the movie up a wee bit digitally, because the no eye effect thing is a wee bit dated. Again, I'm not going to detract from the movie for that. It was 1997.
Yeah, the digital effects. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the digital effects in this movie haven't aged well.
No,
there aren't a lot of them.
No.
They're mostly used for sort of zero G kind of here objects floating around.
Which it's fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they were making Apollo 13 and sending people up in the vomit comet to film scenes while it free falls and stuff like that. They weren't doing that for this movie. They were like, let's just have wires and strings, and we'll digitally put things in afterwards. And It doesn't look great, but I didn't find it to be particularly distracting.
No, it's not.
No.
Which is why, like, I don't think it would well, what I know about doing this, like, but to touch it up and make it look a bit more real. But again, as you say, it's not that distracting. It is what it is. It's a movie made in 1997, and they do well enough for it.
Yeah, the physical effects more than make up
for
any lack of technological prowess in the digital effects, I think, easily.
But so yeah, the once the dream's done, they very quickly get into Event Horizon. A ship that disappeared 7 years ago has reappeared near Neptune.
It's a great. It's in orbit around Neptune. It's a fantastic. I love the concept of it's a ghost ship. It is exactly like the ghost ship thing. It's the Marie Celeste in a way.
Oh yeah.
It's like, here's this ship and it just showed up. Mm-hmm. It's been gone. Like in the sort of fiction of the universe, the Event Horizon is this famous naval disaster essentially of this ship exploded and killed all these people. But then we get the reveal from Sam Neill where he explains, no, that's actually not what happened. We built this drive, which he then explains with the folding over the paper, and it can travel to the nearest star in seconds, basically.
Yeah.
And he basically says everything was fine, and they turned on the drive, and then they were gone. Mm-hmm. And it's been 7 years, and now suddenly it showed up again. And that is unnerving, because it's like, where's she been, Doctor? I believe Lawrence Fishburne says to him, and he just sort of shrugs. We just don't know. And you're like, you're watching a horror movie, I guess, from start to, but then you're watching it, you get this pit in your stomach. You're like, oh my! And everyone's reaction as well. They do a really good job of communicating that everyone knows about the Event Horizon in the same way that today everyone knows about the Titanic, or something like that, or any like. I hesitate to use, such recent examples, but it's like something like, the World Trade Centers or something like that. It's something that, it's a disaster. It's a horrible thing that happened that everybody knows about and everybody has feelings about. And that is communicated quite well with the way they get up and like Cooper tries to walk away from the table at that point because he's like, nah, this is bullshit. And you get this real like, oh, this is in the culture of these people. The Event Horizon is this famous disaster that happened, and now they're being told this counter thing of that. No, that's not what happened. Yeah, and it's hard for them to believe it.
Oh, as you said, it's like if the Titanic suddenly docked in Belfast here, and everyone's like, what?
What happens in? I believe it is it Ghostbusters 2, where the Titanic shows. Maybe it's the first one. I can't remember.
I think it's 2.
Where the Titanic just shows up at the dock and all the ghosts are getting off it. Yeah, it'd be like if that happened, So, yeah, they do a really good job of just being spooky from the outset of like, we don't know. And then there's no communication from the ship. So we don't know what's happened to the crew. And the fact that it's also really good that they are already out there when they're told this. They've gone all the way out to Neptune. Yeah. And
they're all raging as well because they were on leave.
Yeah, they've all been pulled off leave. They work for it. It's not clear if they are military. They keep referring to the USAC. Yeah. But you get the idea that they're just some kind of salvage team that's employed. You feel like they're government employees at least. Yeah. And they have been requisitioned, and maybe they are military because they were pulled off leave to go and do this mission, and they weren't told what it was. No. Or at least they've been lied to up to this point about what it was, and all of a sudden they're raging. So nobody is happy with Dr. Weir at this point. Like, they're already pissed off, and then they're like, oh, you also lied to us about this, and now we're stuck out here at Neptune, which is a horrible planet. It's just a nightmare gas giant.
Yeah. Plus it takes them, is it a few months or so to get... It would take them a few months to get home.
Yeah, this is in a universe where humanity is still based around our solar system. Yeah, at least, which is why the Event Horizon was this thing to like get out of the solar system and explore the rest of the universe. Yeah. So it has they've gone in. They have to go into cryostasis, like stasis pods, to sleep for the journey because the journey is so long, much like Alien.
Yeah.
Another little cribbing there from that. But we'll forgive it. That is a common sci-fi concept. That's fine. They're not the first ones to do it. They will be the last.
Yeah, it's almost taken as a given now in a lot of space travel and sci-fi things. Is cryo sleep.
Yeah, you're going to need to go to sleep for this journey because it's so long.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the whole thing is they get there and there's no one on board. They dock with it, and they're all quite rude to Weir. I think the animosity towards him sort of lasts for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And rightly so, because he becomes deserving of it eventually. They get on board the ship, and they have two people that go on board, and it's one person. I think
Justin and Peters goes on board as well, doesn't she?
Peters and Justin, yeah, she's on board too. She's investigating the foredecks while Justin goes in the back.
Yeah.
So we get that sort of, she is the one who's going through the spooky part of the ship, whereas Justin's going through the more overtly weird part of the ship, and you get that great sort of shot of this ridiculous corridor.
Yeah, the meat grinder corridor.
Yeah, the meat grinder corridor. So the corridor that leads into the engineering, with the engine room, essentially, where this terrifying engine is that actually opens.
I do appreciate that they try to they try to explain the meat grinder corridor, because then we're sick, because
it's a throwaway line.
We're not coming up with the meat grinder thing. It's literally Justin says it looks like a meat grinder, and Professor Weir is trying to explain to them that, oh no, it creates a magnetic field for the blah blah blah, the core, like just all this like silly techno babble that you just go, you know what, go for it.
At some point he probably throws out the word positrons, I don't know. But either way, we get this fantastic sort of, even like the door is terrifying the way it opens up. It's like 4 different discrete sections that like open like a sphincter almost, or a throat. It's really weird.
Don't say a sphincter.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so let's say throat then. It opens like a throat, but it's a throat full of spinning knives essentially. And then he has to walk all the way down it into this frightening sort of metallic, it's like brushed metal, matte metallic room that is covered in just conical spikes. And in the center it has this terrifying, like as what you said before about Hellraiser, that is like something straight out of Hellraiser, in like the Hellraiser 2 maybe, in the Hell Dimension, where we see this metal object with these lit up sort of rings spinning around it in this eerie way, and the whole room is just, again, like I said before, it looks like the gateway to hell.
Yeah.
Like,
and when
it
the
just
lights
looks like that,
when the lights align on the front of the thing, it suddenly becomes Pink Floyd live in concert.
Yeah, with the, like,
it looks
the shining spotlights outwards. Yeah. So he's in there while I keep forgetting her character's name. What's her character's name?
Peters,
yeah. So Peters is up in the foredecks, where we're guessing all the implied horror has happened.
Yeah.
Because she's like, oh, there's nobody here, and you get this like stupid sort of jump scare of I think is that with the glove comes in? There's a floating glove.
There is a body. There's like a floaty body when she's trying to take the CD out. Because we're still using CDs in 2047.
Yes, I thought that was a bit silly. It's like a DVD-ROM or something. It's like, nah, probably a CD-ROM at that stage. Actually, it's 1997, so
they're very versatile. Like, you can spray jam on them and they still work.
Apparently so. Yes. Yeah, so you got that whole sort of like, she's in there and it's all very spooky, and you get this, they do this wonderful thing because it's in Neptune.
Yeah.
And there are electrical storms in Neptune. You have this constant sort of lightning storm that is going on outside that is used to delightfully wonderful effect.
Yeah.
So you can have like lightning flashes at dramatic moments, and it's a bit silly in concept, but it's something I really love in a film when something happens and you have a dramatic lightning flash. They do it really well in this. And she's in the foredecks, and you have like, she's sort of floating around. She's like, oh, I don't know, it's abandoned. I don't see, where are the crew? And you get this lightning flash, and you see behind her this gruesome sort of fleshy. It's flesh that's
it's
smeared all over the walls.
Yeah. It's like the walls just made out of this bloody flesh stuff.
And like it's really well timed because they're asking where's the crew, and then that's like there's the crew. That's what's left of them. It's just smeared with like bits of a skull and stuff pushed into it, and it's nasty. And you could see how that I think speaks to me of like that's why I want to see the original cut of this movie, because that's grim. I want to see the rest of the stuff that was too much for them to put in the movie, because that's nasty enough. It
also makes me think later on, not to give a little bit of a spoiler, I suppose. Peters and I forget what Jolie Richardson's character's called, but they're working in that room whenever they get the
she's Stark.
Whenever they get the oxygen, the gravity all sorted, they're working in that room, and I was just sitting there thinking, God, the smell in there would be absolutely rank.
Yeah, because like theoretically throughout the whole time there's been no air in there, but there is now. They fill it up.
Yeah.
And you'd expect that stuff to start decaying. So yeah, you can imagine.
That's like, all. And so when they're working on that later, it's like, oh God's sake, clean it up or something.
Yeah, I bet that's horrible. Like they're only there. They're there. I think like in total, I think the movie is like 24 hours. Maybe,
yeah, it is. Yeah, it's
when they arrive.
Yeah,
yeah, which is still like that's enough time for meat at room temperature to spoil and get weird. I know it's horrible to think of it in those terms. But
when you explain it like that, though, it's probably not it's probably not a priority at that stage when you're trying to.
They have a lot of other really bad things to worry about.
We'll get there.
Yeah. So that's the point where, people start to see things.
Yeah.
Then they
think
watch.
Do you know what I think? You could class these as ghosts as well, in that sense.
Yeah. I mean, straight up, it's at some point they imply that the ship is possessed. And that is the ghostly goings on, but they're definitely like mischievous. It's like projections that the ship is making, maybe, because it wants them to die,
and it can it can kind of read their memories very much like Solaris. So
again, evil Solaris.
Yeah,
this film sort of is.
So it will find what you fear and or something that you love that you miss and
corrupt it.
Yeah. So like the first ghost, I'm going to call it ghosts anyway, is Peter's son. He has like messed up legs. He is
in the sort of, she is watching videos of him, so you can tell that he's sick. He has some kind of illness. They don't get into what it is.
Non-specific leg illness.
Indeed, but he seems like he's ill. He's pale. And he's sickly. He's always well wrapped up in all the videos that she has of him when he's outside. So you imagine that he has some kind of
like an immune kind of deficiency,
like an immune disorder, like an autoimmune disorder or something like that. And she's very, very sad about having to leave him. That is also a reason why she can be angry at Weir.
Yeah,
in that she was supposed to be, her and her husband are divorced, and she was supposed to have her son over Christmas, this is the winter, and she's like, she's actually kind of cool about it. She's like, it's okay, I'll have him for the summer.
Yeah,
he'll have him over Christmas, and I'll have him for the summer. But you can tell that like that's where her sort of focus is. That's where her head's at.
Yeah.
Is that she is like, she should be with her son, and she's not. And so the first apparition is she sees her son running by the sort of, he's in an oxygen tent, I think, at some point. They're looking after Justin because he's in a bad way from going through the hell portal and then being pulled out by Cooper, and is not well and is sort of in a coma, and it just intermittently wakes up and says horrible scary things about what he's seen, and then goes back to sleep again or gets sedated. But they got that great sort of, there's an oxygen tent there for some reason.
Yeah. And
you got that horrible sort of sound of someone scratching their nails on the inside of it. And it's really, it is sort of, it gives me the shivers.
Yeah, again, the atmosphere is done very well in those scenes. Yeah. Kind of, play up on it, and they work because it's so atmospheric.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah, all that stuff just works really well. It's a haunted house basically, but it's in space.
Yeah.
They do a lot of things that haunted house movies will do, like the Amityville Horror, Poltergeist, stuff like that, where you just have weird noises going on and people like going to investigate those weird noises, and maybe they shouldn't, and you have that don't go in there thing that you're shouting at the screen, but it's kind of fun because you know that they're doing that.
Yeah.
You know that's sort of the point of a lot of those films is this is ludicrous, you know, you would never go off on your own. But they do have the excuse in this movie of we all have jobs to do because we need to get off here, so we have to go off on our own to deal with these different things. Like Sean Pertwee, most of the time his character is that he's the engineer. Mm-hmm. He is trying to fix their ship because their ship is damaged by the, I don't know, hell pulse.
Yeah, there's like once they pull Justin out, the Hellgate, the core, just kind of releases this pulse, which also, why didn't it affect the detonators?
I don't know, but shush. In many ways, it's like, I mean, it seems like that's an intentional thing that the ship has done to break their ship.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Again,
that's why
you can explain it away. You can explain most things away because the ship is essentially a living entity at this point.
Yeah, the ship is evil and it doesn't want them to leave. And in fact, later on, you get this sort of, because Sam Neill's character, Dr. Weir, who built the ship, obviously he feels attached to the ship initially because it was his baby, essentially, whenever it was originally built. And the whole thing 7 years before was his project. But he becomes way more attached to it the longer they are there. And like has a few encounters with his dead wife ghost.
And he also suffers from guilt, again, very much like Solaris, because he was clearly a workaholic at the time, and he spent too much time on making the event horizon and doing all this, and he neglected his wife, and that is implied.
It is. He even says it. Yeah. He is going through an hallucination in which it is, in fact, her killing herself, where he is there in the bathroom, which he wasn't. And he's like, and he's like, I wasn't there. He specifically says, I wasn't there. I should have been there. Yeah.
That scene kind of annoyed me. There was a choice in that one. There's like this big whoosh sound after each scene, because it I think that's the scene that has the screen wipes. But every time it does this like really invasive whoosh noise, and it's such like a minor thing, but it was so annoying. It's like, it's like, who decided to do that?
But, Paul W.S. Anderson, that's who.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
We know exactly who decided.
Indeed. So yeah, you get this whole sort of weird connection between him and the ship, and it basically bringing his wife back to not taunt him, but ingratiate him maybe to it.
Oh, she appears to him at roundabouts, not long after Peter's son appears to her. Weir's wife appears when he's in a maintenance tunnel, which looks really cool, and it's like bright green. And
it's like this
future
corridor. This little duct doesn't make a lot of sense, but it looks great. It looks
awesome. But she appears
like
to him and
green light.
she appears and literally says something along the lines of "Be with me forever."
Yeah.
So already the ship, it's targeted in him as I'm gonna
he's
get
the
this
most
guy.
vulnerable. Yeah, he is the most vulnerable out of everybody. I'd say like Peters is next in line because she's emotionally vulnerable because she's missing her son.
Yeah,
and maybe she is more acutely affected by being away from Earth than anyone else. So she's the one who's being harangued by a ghost specifically then, and Weir is vulnerable because he still hasn't gotten over the death of his wife and the guilt that is attached to this ship, because that's what he was working on when he was neglecting her.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So that leads him to becoming the antagonist as the movie goes on, where he wants them to do things for the ship and ultimately take everyone back to hell, which is where they eventually sort of establish that, like, where's the ship been all this time? and what happened to the crew, and we get sort of an idea of that from the ship's log that they eventually decode, and it's terrible and horrible, and it's a bit silly. It's a bit silly. It is gruesome, but yeah, the mad sudden screaming is a bit silly. But there's a lot of stuff with eyes, like people gouging out their own eyes, and which it does eventually happen to his wife. Ghost does that to him. I don't know if it's implied that she does it or if he's doing it to himself.
It seems like, again, like playing in on the fact that, you know, it's the ship creating these visions, or ghosts, if you will, and he does it to himself physically, but it's kind of in his dream state that he's in. It's her doing it to him, so it's a bit. Yeah,
but he ends up with no eyes anyway.
Which is the important thing.
Yeah, that he has no eyes, but he's still dandering about like he does have eyes, and like which gives him this weird. He just becomes this. He becomes really scary at that point. I think Sam Neill steals the show for me in this movie. I think when he becomes the villain proper, it's just
he's so menacing. He's very
so menacing. And his dialogue is really good. Like, he has that moment where he is there. He's got no eyes. He's stitched his eyes up, and at this point, he has murdered Jason Isaacs' character, the medic, by like splitting him open and suspending him from. It's nasty, and that's just so mean. And then in the process of doing that, he has also stitched his own eyes up, and nasty stuff. And he has this great moment where Lawrence Fishburne is talking to him about you have no eyes, you've gouged your own eyes out, oh my god, can't you see what you're doing? And he has this great line where he says, where we're going, we won't need eyes to see. I'm like, oh my god, that's so horrible. And like it's really messed up, and he gets blasted out the goddamn window at that point. Like it's all kind of his own fault. He's got this rivet gun or something, or it's like a grapnel gun.
Yeah, because at this point Cooper gets because the Lewis and Clark gets destroyed, and he's on a bit of it.
Weir has gone on a rampage at that point, trying to screw the whole thing up to stop them getting away.
Yeah.
So he has taken one of the explosives from the corridor for like the emergency lifeboat thing or whatever, and put it on their ship right when they fix it up, and unfortunately kills Sean Pertwee. He has this great moment because he's really likable, because he's also this weird everyman in that he's the guy who's running around going, I hate this, and he refuses to get on the ship,
which he's, you know, that's any normal person.
Yeah, as an audience member, you're like, oh well, of course, like I'm with him.
Yeah,
I'm with him. He's all like, I'm gonna stay here and I'm gonna fix our ship so we can get the hell out of here, because everything that's happened on there is awful. And he just even then, like, you know, he refuses to leave because they're like, oh no, he's put one of the bombs on the ship, and he's like, no, I'm still not getting off the ship. I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna fix this. And he has this great moment where he does find where Weir's put it, and he pops open the little thing, and it's like 6 seconds to detonation.
Yeah,
and you just see his face, and it's so sad because he's like, oh no, and then that's it, and that's the end of him.
Yeah,
and Cooper's on the outside. He's just finished welding up, and he is blown away into space. He doesn't die. He's just shot off into Nowheresville in his spacesuit.
Yeah, and this is the point that I was mentioning earlier. He's very calm under pressure, because I would be screaming like a lunatic at this point. He's just like, oh shit.
He's like, oh no, yeah. He's on this sort of, he's holding on to this big chunk of debris from the ship, and he's like, right, okay. I gotta get back. I gotta get off this thing. I gotta get back. And then you see him sort of getting away, and he has like a wee jetpack, and he's he fumbles around it, and then it cuts back to the ship, and you sort of forget about him a little bit for a while, because he's like, he's no longer sort of part of the story at that point.
No.
Until Weir is being confronted, and then he shows up at the window at exactly the wrong time. When like Weir blows a hole in the window, and then he gets blasted out again away from the ship. Poor bastard. And then we're disposed of Weir at that point because he flies out into the vacuum. And you're like, all right, well, that creepy fucker's gone. Thank Christ.
Or so we think.
Or so we think, yes. And then you get, that's where this film really ramps up the sort of tension of, right, now we really need to find a way off here because we're screwed.
Yeah.
And there's the whole thing, the thing that gets explained earlier where the explosives are there to destroy the middle corridor so that if there's an emergency, the front decks can be used as a lifeboat, and the back decks where the horrible, horrible hell engine is will be left behind conveniently. So they're like, well, that's now our only plan. Yeah. So they want to do that. And of course, everybody has to split up again everyone who's left has to split up to do their things. Eventually, Cooper comes back in a sort of a fake out moment where you think it's going to be Weir at the airlock. And then he comes stumbling in and you're like, oh, thank God it's him. Yay. In one of his many sort of little comic relief moments of, don't hit me, I believe is what he says when he comes back in. They're doing all that and they obligatory split up. And, it's like, oh, I have to go to the back to set all these charges off. If Lawrence Fishburne's doing all that, while everybody else is up the front being like, we need to prepare this thing for our journey ahead. And have that great scene where all like the green fluid turns into blood. Like, so you get this idea that like it's on the ship. It's like, it really enforces the ship is alive thing where like almost it's like veins and arteries almost filling with blood in the ship. And you're like, that's really creepy. And he gets forced and Lawrence Fishburne gets forced into the back section by an hallucination of his friend that he left behind to die.
Yeah, he tells
in a previous mission.
He tells DJ all about that earlier on, about how no one, he never told anyone about this, but the ship knows. That's how you know the ship can get into your head.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's like, that's his dark secret in his past that he feels guilty about, that has followed him around and is like, I swore I would never lose another man. Now at this point he has, he's lost. Sean Pertwee's character is dead at this point, and Jason Isaacs is dead too. And Peters is dead. I keep forgetting her name. It's terrible.
Oh yeah, the only ones here alive at this point are Stark, Cooper, and Lawrence Fishburne's character.
Justin is still alive.
Oh yes, that's right.
Justin is destroyed at this point. Like, I mean, he's not holding on too well. At that point, he has like reanimated and tried to blow himself out an airlock. Yeah, and then been exposed to that, which is that scene in particular I find is really stressful. I find the point where Justin has managed to get himself into an airlock and he's all being spooky, like he's possessed. He's like, oh, if you'd seen what I'd seen, you wouldn't try to stop me. And
the darkness inside me and stuff like that. And
at the point where he has fully engaged the airlock and they can't fix it, suddenly he becomes lucid again. Yeah. And he's like, oh my God, where am I? Why am I in an airlock? And it's counting down and it's really stressful and it's horrible.
Surely there should be a cancel button in there.
You'd think so. I think there is, but they imply that, it's too late now. We've gotten to the depressurization point where it's too late. And I have that whole thing. So they do sort of save him there, but he is fucked up from the decompression. So I
think they literally say he won't be pretty, but he'll survive.
Yeah, so he spends the rest of his film. They just put him in the cryopods early, basically, and leave him in there. So they're all up front, and Larry Fish is in the back with the guy that he left to die. Which, as it transpires, he forces him into the engine room where the hell portal is, and so he's stuck in there. And it's like, and then he like seals the door with fire.
Yes,
because that's his whole thing, is that he died in a fire in zero gravity, and it turns out, it's not really him, because he like confronts me. He's like, you're not him, and he turns back, and then all of a sudden it's like, it's Sam Neill. He's somehow still alive, and he got his eyes back, but he's all like stitched together almost looking.
Yeah,
and he does that thing where it's like, the ship brought me back, she won't let me leave, she won't let any of us leave. And that's another great scary line,
which again, it's one of those lines with a lesser actor it would come off cheesy, and a bad actor would mess it up. Like Sam Neill's actually, his delivery of all this is menacing, and It's done
he's
well.
Really
enough.
scary. He is frightening. He has this. It's believable as well. His descent is believable because it is gradual.
Yeah.
He starts off being like a bit nervous, and he's abrasive with people. He's a bit of a dick.
Yeah.
But you get an idea that he is a man who is damaged.
There's a moment kind of in the middle where you kind of see that the ship is having an effect on him, where like Peters comes running in, they close the door, and there's banging and stuff at it, and he's very confident at this point, which is uncharacteristic so far, and he's going, open the door. And he strides down to open the door, and they all have to deal with him.
That's his turning point of I've just reached the point where I have I guess the sort of, in the parlance of our times, drunk the Kool-Aid. In that he has now gone over to being like, I think it's that scene in particular where it's like, because he is sitting there, you can almost see him mulling it over. And that's the point where he decides, no, I'm all in on this, and then he gets up to open the door, and that's when they take him out.
And slightly later from that is because him and Lawrence Fishburne have a couple of different confrontations, but there's one in particular where Lawrence Fishburne says, "Oh, we're going home," and then of course Sam Neill creepily goes, "I am home," and then disappears into the dark.
I love that. He backs off into the disappears into the shadows, and like, again, it's something I love to see when a director isn't afraid to do something that might come off as cheesy.
No, that one works. That does work very well.
The fact that they are willing to lean into it makes it work so well. Because I laughed when it happened, but I laughed because I was delighted by it. I laughed because I was like, "That's beautiful. That's a wonderful horror movie moment."
And that's actually if I remember right, that's the last time they see him with his eyes.
Yes, the next time we see him, he's having his horrible sort of hallucination into his past with his wife, where he gets his eyes gouged out, and that's where he properly becomes a monster. He becomes the monster in the monster movie at that point, and I think it's done. The transition is done very well because they communicate it to you gradually mentally, and then he physically changes at that point, so you can see that he has become a monster because he's stitched his own eyes up, and then later he is gradually getting worse. So when he's effectively blasted out into space and then turns up again in this sort of confrontation scene where he is fully stitched back together, like there are rents all over his flesh where he has been destroyed essentially, and then it's like the ship has sort of tried to bodge him back together, like
Frankensteined him
monster.
together.
Yes, and he's just so grandiose at that point. He is orating and he is a lunatic at that point. He has lost his grip on reality, and he's loving the idea of going to hell and talking about. They do that sort of where they communicate how awful hell is through him, where he's like, hell is just a word for something you couldn't possibly comprehend. And you get he shows him all these horrible flashing images of terrible things happening to members of his crew. The people that, like, you see get horrible things happening to Justin and Jolie Richardson, and it's just awful. And you're like, oh no, this is terrible, this could go really rotten. And the portal is opening, and suddenly you've got a new ticking clock. At that point, the ticking clock was, oh no, we're going to run out of air and we're going to choke. But now the ticking clock is, we need to get this stuff done before this countdown finishes and we all go to hell, which is terrible. So it's all sort of left up to Larry Fish and Sam Neill in their confrontation. And that stuff, I think, is done really, really well, where they are just like, he's just discussing it and he gets carried away in his monologue like a really great villain, while Lawrence Fishburne is trying to get his hands on the detonator. And it's just, I think it's just done really, really well. I think he is really intimidating, and again, like you said, in the hands of a lesser actor, maybe it wouldn't come off very well.
I don't think it would.
No,
it's a tightrope that he walks, and he does it incredibly well, where he is frightening. Someone else could have done it, and you would have, because it's like borderline campy almost, but it never seems to fall into that category.
Yeah, it never crosses the line into camp. It could so easily.
Yeah.
And
especially like at this point he's a naked man. They have like a bit of a naked man punch up at this point.
They do. They have a fight. Well, it's more just Lawrence Fishburne's getting his ass kicked by a big naked Sam Neill.
Well, he grabs that big metal pole and
he does.
He gives him a few like.
Yeah, he had somebody just sort of stands there. He's just sort of whatever's him because at this point he is like the monster and he has become a supernatural being at this point because he was dead and now he's been brought back by the haunted ship. And
also like I like that I'm a sucker for a good old hero sacrifice thing, and that's essentially that's exactly actually what Lawrence Fishburne does here. He knows the only way his crew can get away is if he blows the bridge with him on at the hell dimension. Yeah,
he can't get out of that room anymore,
no.
And he's screwed. But he also holds the key to their salvation, in that he has the detonator that will take out the middle corridor and set them loose.
Yeah,
and he has that moment where he's like, Sam Neill's screaming at him, like it's ramping up, and he's like, "Do you see?" And you get these horrible images, and then he's like, "Do you see?" And then he stops and he turns to look at him. He grabs the detonator and he's like, "Yes, I see." And he hits the button, and you're like, "Yes!" But then while you're shouting "yes," you're like, "Oh no!"
Yeah,
because now he's fucked. And again, everyone else knows it because the whole thing blows up. The four decks leave, and Stark, Jolie Richardson, is looking out this window, and she just is looking at the aft section where he's stuck there, and she just says Miller, and then it disappears. The portal opens and it goes through and it's gone, and you're like, well, Captain Miller went to hell.
Yeah.
And nothing else is done with that, but it's this great sort of, it sets this sort of tone for the rest of the movie. It's a bummer. It's a real bummer ending.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, these three survived in as much as they did.
Yeah.
I mean, Justin's screwed, and Cooper's all right. Cooper's in good health. I think he's not
Cooper's
really badly
okay,
hurt.
yeah.
Jolie Richardson has been traumatized.
Oh,
definitely. Yes. Stark has been traumatized by everything. In fact, she is covered in the ship's blood at that point, because there's a point where she gets just like in The Shining, there's sort of a tidal wave of blood that hits her, and it's just she looks like she's been through the ringer.
Yeah.
So she's marked, but Miller went to hell, and it's just grim conceptually. Yeah. So I'd say that looking at the film as a whole, I think it's a triumph of science fiction horror. Now this again, I know I hate to do like qualifiers for things. When I'm defending John Carpenter, I feel like I'm going to do the opposite here with Paul W.S. Anderson, because I feel like Paul W.S. Anderson as a director has made a lot of films that I really do not like.
Yeah,
He's done a lot of video game movies. He's done Alien vs Predator, which was not a movie that I liked. You
could have actually just finished with it. It is not a movie.
No, but I will show you. I'm just going to quote you here and say it's atrocious. Yes, Alien vs Predator is atrocious. He did all the Resident Evil live action movies. The first one I kind of enjoy in a way.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
They're not good films. They're hugely successful. They make a lot of money. He's a director. I think that studios like him because he makes films like we were saying before about how he said to them, I have 10 weeks to do this by guild rules, but I'll do it in 6. He's that guy. He'll get a movie done for you, and he will probably do it under budget, and it'll probably make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Which maybe is, I feel like. I don't want to do him down too much because I do think this movie is great, and I do like the Mortal Kombat movie in a way. It's, as far as video games movies go, it's probably the best one.
Yeah, but it's that particular. It's almost like what John Carpenter was trying to do, with Ghosts of Mars,
the
according to that
tongue-in-cheek.
interview again. Paul W.S. Anderson managed it, but he was probably going at it, thinking, I'm going to make a very good Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to say that it's an all right Mortal Kombat movie. Alien vs Predator is trash. I dislike the Resident Evil movies as a whole. Again, as I say, I find the first one to be entertaining to a point. It's not good. I don't like any of the sequels. I've seen the second and third one, and after that, I did not want to see any more. I think there's 5 of them in total now, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't really like any of them. He has done. He did Pompeii, which was awful. It was just terrible, stupid, epic disaster movie.
Oh, I remember.
I
did see that.
Terrible.
Yeah, that is bad.
It was really bad. He did an aggressively bad a movie I find hateful. He did a Three Musketeers movie in 2011 that I thought was absolute dross of the highest order. And he's done this new Monster Hunter movie, which I do not want to see.
No.
Straight up, whether it's good or not. I'm not really a big fan of Monster Hunter anyway, so I'm not really keen on it. But it's weird because I genuinely think the Event Horizon is great. I think it's brilliant as far as science fiction horror movies. I have a deep affection for anyway, so maybe I'm predisposed to it in that way. But as far as the pantheon of those kinds of movies go, I think it is really high up there because it has this thing where a lot of sci-fi horror is based around spooky monsters and aliens.
Yeah,
it's usually not what this movie is, which is like there is a heavy supernatural element to this film.
Oh, big time.
And because whenever we were looking for movies that fit this mold, it was hard to find them because you generally don't get supernatural elements in space. It's generally and even like you could look at Solaris and say, again, the whole way when we were talking about Solaris, we were talking about are they ghosts, and you were saying that they're not ghosts, and I'm arguing that they are.
We were trying to convince ourselves more than anything.
Yeah. Whether or not they're ghosts in Solaris is a matter of opinion. What do you consider a ghost to be? Is a ghost a disembodied soul of a human being, or is it an ethereal thing that's come from somewhere else? I don't know. But straight up in Event Horizon, the ship is possessed. Lawrence Fishburne says that. Yep. And Jolie Richardson says that as well, that the ship is possessed and that the ship has become a living thing somehow by being possessed. And that's not a thing that you get a lot in science fiction horror. It's almost like a Lovecraft sort of thing of interdimensional beings, and it's been somewhere and come back and brought something with it, but that thing that has come back is beyond our understanding. Yeah, which is a very Lovecraft thing. It's almost cosmic horror in that way, but I'm going to lean on. I'm still going to consider it to be a ghost. I think it's still a ghost.
Well, I mean, it's heavily implied that the ship has went to hell.
Yes,
like in the idea of what we think of hell, like a don't like saying Christian hell, but that style of one.
Yes.
So. Yeah, the supernatural element it's bringing. I know what you're saying. Like it's Lovecraftian, and the fact that this is quite literally a cosmic horror.
Yes, because it's out in the cosmos.
Yeah, but it seems very rooted in our idea of hell, and that. So I don't have a problem saying this is supernatural.
Yeah, I mean, it's open to interpretation, of course. Like all good films, there are a few different ways you can look at it.
I love that this episode has become us justifying why we picked these movies.
Yeah, well, you know what? I feel like it is needed a bit. Because like Ghost of Mars, in Ghost of Mars, it's almost implied that they are like microorganisms that are infecting people. Yeah, but their behavior is just like ghosts, and it is called Ghosts of Mars. And in fact, they don't really scientifically explore that in Ghosts of Mars. The doctor lady sort of mentions creatures on Earth that lie dormant and then reanimate in pools of water, but she doesn't say. She says, "I think maybe that's what's happening here," but they never get specific about it. Solaris, they seem to be fleshy. They seem
fleshy
to be,
ghosts.
They seem to be fleshy ghosts, but then they don't die, and I consider that. I consider Solaris to be supernatural in a way.
Oh yeah.
It is beyond understanding. It might be cosmic horror, but it's not really horror. I don't think the people in Solaris are scared by the things, but I don't think we as the audience are scared.
Unless you're
whereas
scared of George Clooney.
Yeah, which I'm not. I don't find him to be a frightening man.
No, neither do I.
I saw our brother Art. He was very personable.
I just oh yeah, he's brilliant in that.
Yeah.
No, I just mean in the fact that like the close up shots of him take up probably about 80% of the movie.
Yeah, they linger on him a lot. Whereas I feel like the Event Horizon is an ensemble cast. It's about the crew.
Yeah.
More than anything, everybody has their thing. Everybody has their moment. Like you might consider Lawrence Fishburne to be the protagonist. You might consider Jolie Richardson's character to be the protagonist.
She is in it very little when you actually kind of if you take note of kind of how much she's in it, screen time and things like that. At one point she's actually knocked out, even though he's going on a rampage killing everyone else. So you're like,
yes.
What's that about? But
he just sort of hits her a bit, and then she needs smelling salts to come back around. And then she gets knocked out again. Really, she gets really bashed around in that scene, actually.
But so I never really considered her the main.
I did.
Yeah.
Which is, again, I guess, like any good film, it's open to different interpretations, and we're both sort of looking at it in a different way, I think, which is good.
I mean, I'm looking in the right way.
You're looking at it the right way, and I'm looking at it in the correct way. Yeah, I'm coming correct to this one.
Oh, right.
So, because I feel like it's almost... I feel like it's almost told from her perspective in a lot of ways. Obviously, it's not 100%, but...
do you think the whole thing's a flashback?
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to...
Does that mean the bits where Sam Neill is dreaming of his wife, that's actually a flashback within a flashback?
That is a flashback in a way, actually. Is it a flashback in a flashback? I don't know. I don't want to talk about Ghosts of Mars anymore. Please stop trying to lever us back into Ghosts of Mars. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Please stop. Okay? I think... You know what? I'm just going to call this here. Shut up, you. Now a word from our sponsor.
Fight me!
Fight me!
Fight me!
Use offer code FIGHTME at checkout for 10% off.
Okay, so that then brings us to the sort of crux of this whole thing. So I guess first we'll get out of the way. I think it might be obvious at this point. But which of these films do we think is the best film?
Ghosts
overall?
of Mars, clearly. Landslide.
You know what? I'm not even going to acknowledge. As far as I'm concerned,
joke about it.
As far as I'm concerned, we only talked about two films. We talked about Solaris and we talked about Event Horizon. I'm 100% discounting Ghost of Mars, I think, just because on general principle of it's aggressively awful. I can't think of a real redeeming feature in it at all.
No, of course not. I think it's quite obvious. Event Horizon is the one that we enjoyed the most, and I think if we look back, it's the one we talked about the most as well.
We definitely did spend the most time on it. I think it has the most in it to talk about, really.
There was very little to really sink your teeth into with Solaris,
Yeah, I don't think there's much to cling to in the Solaris as far from a sort of a surface level enjoyment of it, certainly. I think there's something to be said about Solaris for... I think it's well put together.
Yeah.
I think it is nicely shot.
Yeah.
It is on a technical level. I think it is a very competent film. It looks nice. The digital effects in it actually are quite nice. They're not overused. They show you sort of Solaris. It looks nice and it's weirdly it is spooky looking. It is this sort of... They never really get into what it is.
No.
They just refer to it as Solaris, which is odd to me in a way that obviously they've made it look like it seems like it's a star, like a blue dwarf star, maybe. But like in the original, novel and film, it's a water-covered planet. And the whole thing with it is like towards the end, it starts to develop land masses. Is the thing that's happening, whereas in this they have it expand to consume them.
Or well, no, it just draws the ship closer.
Yeah, but it is expanding as well. He says it's taking on mass, I believe is what they say. Once they do their thing to destroy the ghosts. So yeah, I'd say that it's not as good as Event Horizon. It's maybe an apples to oranges comparison. I don't know, but
I could see a certain person appreciating Solaris more than Event Horizon. I can see they'd be very polarizing for a lot of people. But generally, I would say Event Horizon would be accepted a lot easier.
Yeah, I would much rather sit down if I had to say in a year's time, and I wanted to sit down and watch one of these films again. It is easily Event Horizon that has the staying power. Yeah, it's not Ghosts of Mars. Certainly, I'm going to go so far as to say I don't think I will ever watch Ghosts of Mars ever again. I hope
4 times is enough. Is it?
Yes, 4 times was the right number, I guess. Event Horizon, I think, it speaks to me personally in a way that I love horror, and I like really good sort of physical effects. I think the physical effects, the physical, let's say, gore. I don't want to reduce it to just gore, but it is it's very well done in this film.
Well, it's like what we mentioned before when we did the werewolf one, that it is important for a certain level of the gore or the effects, whatever term you want to put on it, to be good for these things to work. Yeah, if they're going to show it to you, it should look good. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely horror films where they don't show you things, and it's very, very effective in that way. Yeah, but yeah, in a film like this where they're like, here are these horrible things, I think they do it really well. Again, like the digital effects aren't really used in that way. Usually, there's the bit with the eyes gouged out, maybe in. But again, Sam Neill's wife. They're kind of like they're pushed into a corner with that, because what else do you do? You know, you can't. They can't do that with physical effects.
You can't actually gouge out Sam Neill's eyes.
He might have something to say about that.
Yeah, I don't think. There's no contract you can draw up that's gonna.
Even the most hardened method actor isn't going to go that far.
Yeah, they're going to draw the line, like so. Yeah, and they mostly use digital effects just for the zero gravity. Here's a bottle of water floating around, and actually the sound design on those bits is really nice when you hear the water sloshing around inside there. I find that quite satisfying to hear that. It's that's very good. But all the sort of the visual effects and the grim sort of gore and stuff is very good. And the ship itself, I think, looks really good. It's really intimidating. It's slightly scary. The front of it kind of looks like the head of the alien from Alien a little bit. And there is a sort of a nice contrast between much in the same way as the movie Alien. There is this great contrast between what the interior of their ship is like and what the interior of the ship down on the planet in Alien is like. Yes. It's very different design, and I think that carries over in this very well, whereas the design of the inside of the Event Horizon is way more weird, and it is quite alien compared to their ship, which is very sort of practical, and except for something we didn't actually mention when we were talking about
I know what you're going to bring up.
Fucking captain's chair.
It's so rubbish.
What the fuck was going on there? That is unfortunately, it was quite early in the movie. I'd never thought about it before when I'd seen this film, but this time around it really stuck out to me, especially because Lawrence Fishburne's sitting in it and he's sort of jiggling back and forward constantly like a child on a swing in a playground.
It's one of those things that I think the concept of it. Like if someone comes to you with the idea, the captain's chair will be hanging down here in the middle, you go, oh, that could look really cool. But they, it looks rubbish.
Yeah.
It looks so janky, and
it looks stupid. In practice, it looks really silly. And when you think about it, you wonder, like, why would you do that when you could just bolt the chair to the floor like everyone else's chair is?
Yeah.
Especially if it's, it seems like they're in their mission here anyway, when the ship is in motion and like they're going through the turbulence and stuff, like he is jiggling about all over the place through the turbulence. Everyone else whose seat is part of the floor, they're all quite stable, and he's jiggling around and he's rocking about, and you're expecting him to fall out of it at some point. I think. Like, you just expect him to fall out of the chair and go on his face. And, you're just like, why would anybody do that? And I was like, is that how they do it on submarines, maybe? And maybe they're... No, it isn't. It looks stupid. And it's one of the few sort of design flaws, I think, in the film.
Yeah.
With, like, when you're talking about the sets and stuff. Because the sets all look really good. Everything about, like, the production design is brilliant in this film.
Yeah.
But that is just the thing that really stuck out to me. I was like, that is so daft. But aside from that, the contrast between their ship and the Event Horizon is really good, where it does feel like they have gone somewhere different. They've gone to this haunted house that is, it's scary. It's a frightening place.
Oh, yeah.
And, they draw that line really well in the sand, much like they do with in Alien, between the Nostromo and the alien ship on the planet.
Yeah.
Where you're like, the whole design of this thing is completely different. You know that it's not natural. It's an uncomfortable place to be, to the point where even like Schmitty, Sean Pertwee's character, will not come aboard. Yeah, he does not. He sees it and he's like, "I'm not going in there."
I think a lot of us can identify with him at that point as well. It's like, nope, not going anywhere near that.
Yeah, he's a really good sort of touchstone. Like, that's how I feel. That's how I feel about everything. The things he's saying, I feel the same way. Sean, you stay where you are, except when it doesn't really work for him to stay where he is.
Except for when your captain says, "Get off, there's a bomb on that ship."
Yeah. Like, his refusal to leave the ship at that point is like his undoing. Yeah, the thing that it's sort of like a Greek tragedy in that sense. I don't maybe get too deep here, but like the thing that is his best character trait of being, like, it's good that he's not aboard the ship because bad things happen on the Event Horizon.
Mm-hmm. That's
a good thing up until the point where his refusal to leave the ship dooms him.
Yeah,
because he's like, no, I won't. No, he's not going to destroy my ship. It's the point where he says he's put a bomb on the ship, and he says this Lawrence Fishburne, but I just got done putting her back together. You're like, you feel his pain there, but then you're also like, then his refusal to leave really just screws him, and he does die. But Solaris doesn't really have anything like that. I think they have the Earth stuff happening, but it doesn't feel like it's contrasted to what's going on on the ship.
No, I mean, apart from, he's outside when he's on Earth on a few shots, it's really like, even his apartment is very barren and again, probably to show that he doesn't have much to live for now. He's very much living in the past and stuff. But
he's living a stark existence.
Yeah.
Because again, the production design on Solaris is great too.
Yeah.
I mean, the sets and all and that look brilliant. It's very clean. Yeah. It's a very clean sci-fi future.
Yeah.
Whereas
I prefer my sci-fi a bit gritty.
Yeah, Event Horizon is dirty future. Event Horizon is much like Alien. It's like, we're on this ship that is designed for a specific purpose. It's utilitarian. There's exposed steam pipes everywhere, and it's dirty and greasy, and there's the engine room. Like, Event Horizon does that really well.
It feels lived in.
Yeah.
Like, you can imagine this crew are there, and this is their day to day. This isn't. Yeah. It's not just a set that's built. It feels real.
Yeah, it does. It does. It feels like a place these people work and have to live in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, yes, Event Horizon is definitely our favorite movie here. So that being the case, which one of these films do you think best prepares you for
dealing with ghosts.
Dealing with ghosts in space. I think this is a very different conversation now because I feel like in Event Horizon, they don't really deal with the ghosts in space very well, to the point where the ship eventually does sort of get what it wants.
Yeah. I mean, it gets a few.
Larry Fish to hell, you know. It gets a new crew with Dr. Weir and Captain Miller.
Yeah,
you know, a lot of them do get away, but I don't know if they particularly fend off the evil very well.
No, they're very scarred after it as well.
Yeah.
Well, again, apart from Cooper, who, well, I'm sure he's not feeling the best.
He had his own terrible problems when he was blasted away and had to like be free floating in space around Neptune, which seems like a horrible place.
Yep.
And is terrifying. He was all alone in space, so yeah, he definitely was scarred and has had to deal with some crap too.
He'll definitely not look fondly on those memories anyway.
No, it's not going to be something they'll sit down and have a drink and talk about. It's something they'll sit down and have a drink and quietly think about and not talk about, probably. Yeah, I mean, so as far as...
I think all three of these movies, as we've mentioned before, and it's mainly us kind of taking it upon ourselves to say they're all ghosts, the very different kind of styles of ghosts, let's say, where, as you mentioned before, the ghosts on Mars are almost like a gas that comes out and infects people.
Yes.
It's kind of weird. I mean, they are terrible at dealing with the ghosts because they're doing is shooting them when you shouldn't.
They're shooting them, which frees them up to come out and possess people in the same way that, I don't know if you've seen a film called Forsaken.
No.
A Denzel Washington movie, an early-ish 90s Denzel Washington movie about a sort of a demon that can transfer from one person to another through touch.
Oh, yes, I have seen that, actually. Yeah.
And there's a whole thing in that movie whereby it's all about he needs to touch someone to transfer over into them, but if he is... if the body he's in is killed, then he can sort of free float in the air within something like a mile radius and infect people that way. It's sort of the same thing. So in many ways, by killing the hosts, they're making the ghost more powerful.
Yeah.
And it can more easily take people over. So they're being very stupid and they know that at a certain point in that movie, they know that.
Yep. No, it's made very clear. The doctor lady.
Yeah, she says it. She points it out. And then it happens to her as well. She's a party to the whole thing, even though she warned them about it. And it happens to her, and that's how she meets her sticky end. So they don't deal particularly well.
Automatically, Ghosts of Mars, again, doesn't even do a good job at showing you how to deal with ghosts. So
No. I mean, in some ways it shows you what not to do, which can be useful.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe Solaris takes this in that Solaris they find a way to obliterate the ghosts.
Yes.
You know, they have a special, now again, in the original film it was the Annihilator, which is such a good name for it, but they don't call it that. They call it a Higgs, blah, 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 blah. They talk about Higgs boson particles or whatever, and maybe there's a way to follow the science in this movie that would allow you to build some kind of contraption.
They do actually, it's between Viola Davis's character and that other guy who's... Snow.
Yeah.
They do kind of give some technobabble as to how it's made or the concept of it. So I suppose, there you go. The Solaris actually gives you more of an idea of how to kill a ghost.
Solaris is more of a helpful guide to dealing with and destroying the ghosts
until
the other films.
Until the Ghostbusters really get their act together and get their space program sorted, that's all you can really hope for.
Yeah, the Ghostbusters space program, that's the dream, isn't it?
That is the dream.
Yeah, so I guess that means that Event Horizon goes in the vault in our hearts, but in the education chamber on, I'd say, probably this satellite, we are going to place the Steven Soderbergh's Solaris, the 2002 version. Now, just to be clear about that.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the one we're picking that's scientifically best for dealing with ghosts. Good on us. Well, I guess that's all we have time for. I can feel the sort of gravitational shift pulling us around to the dark side of the Earth here. So once again, thank you very much for listening. We know your time is very, very important. If you have any comments, grievances, complaints, you can email us at filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. That's filmcast@thisweeksapocalypse.com. We are on Twitter. We're at 7 Day Apocalypse. That's numeral 7 at 7 Day Apocalypse. And so until next week.
And remember, people, just leave your eyes inside your head, please, because it'll all be over someday.
Bye.